Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another Planning Committee meeting. My name's Nicholas Wright. I'm chair of this committee. Welcome especially to all the speakers and people who've come this afternoon. We haven't any vice chairman this afternoon. One's in Australia, and I think the other one's somewhere else. I don't know. However, we will manage, and I'd like to introduce Committee Administrator Amanda Lads, Head of Legal Services, Heather Peachy, Kieran Power, Head of Development Manager, and Development Manager Carl Brace, and Planning Officers Joan Desmond, Adam White, Gillian McDermott, and Victoria Finch, who will appear here and there as we go on this afternoon. Also, Assistant Manager South Worcestershire Land Drainage Partnership, Andrew Fell, and Engineering Assistants for Flood Risk, Francesca Davis, who's new to this committee. Thank you for coming. And we are going to have a Conservation Officer, Craig Tibbett, I think, for a later item. So thank you for that. There are fire exits. For those who've been here before, you know there's fire exits here and also the doors where you came in. This meeting is being webcast on YouTube, and we will have a break sometime at a convenient spot in the middle. Thank you. Have we any apologies for absence and substitutes? Mandy, thank you.
Chairman, have had apologies from Councillors Rob Adams, Dan Birch, Nick Dawkes, Andrew Dyke and Mark Ward. Substitutes, Councillor Paul Middleborough is substituting for Councillor Adams, and Councillor Rick Deller is substituting for Councillor Birch. Thank you.
I just want to say that on item 12, Rick Deller, Councillor Deller, will speak as a ward member outside of the committee. And on item 12, I will not vote on this item or comment in the debate, as I am clerk to Elmbridge Parish Council. Therefore, there will be a conflict of interest there. But I will chair the committee for that item. Thank you. Declarations of interest, Mandy.
Chairman, for item 11, Councillor Deller has declared a non-pecuniary interest. He knows the Speaker, Rebecca Pitt, through his role at the Council. And for item 12, Councillor Nicola Morris has declared a non-pecuniary interest. The Speaker, Councillor Barry Audis, is known to her. Thank you.
Are there any other declarations of interest from the committee? Thank you. Councillor Robson.
It's for item 10, just for transparency. It's in my county council division, Offenham is, but I'm not ward member for there.
Thank you. Any others? Any further? No, thank you. You've had the minutes of the last meeting held on the 14th of August. Are there any alterations or amendments to those minutes? No. Can I therefore have a proposer for those minutes? Thank you, Councillor Clatworthy, seconded by Councillor Sims. Thank you. And I say this every time to people who've come to this committee, that the decisions reached by this committee are based on a long run, when it starts as an application to the case officer, to the planning officers, taking into account the National Planning Policy Framework, the planning practice guidance, the waste course strategy, South Worcestershire Development Plan, neighbourhood plans as relevant, and everything else. And if you read the case officer report, it's usually summarised in paragraphs 2 and 3, the amount of work that goes into these cases before it comes to committee. And it's worth saying that the decisions by the committee may not align with what you'd like, but at least hopefully you respect the decisions of the committee, that they're taken into account as much as possible in arriving at the conclusions. For those who are speaking, there will be 3 minutes, and you've probably done this before, those who are speaking, 3 minutes for a town or parish council, 3 minutes for those objecting to an application, 3 minutes for those in support of an application. And if you've got more than one speaker, I'm afraid you still only allow 3 minutes together, total. So I see we've got here 2 in occasions, so if you want one person to speak to, otherwise you have 1.5 minutes, or however you want to split it. So what normally happens is I will introduce the item on the agenda. Planning officer will describe the proposal. And then the parish council will be allowed to speak, then the objectors, then the applicant or supporter. The visiting ward member will then ask questions, as will the committee, and then the ward member will address the committee, if there is one here, and then there'll be debate on the proposals. So that's how it goes. I hope that's reasonably clear. So, without more ado, we'll move on to item 7, which is planning application 25/00442, permission in principle for land at Evesham Road, Harvington, for up to 9 dwellings. And we have 2 speakers, or 3, 2. Our Councillor Gillian Smith from the Harvington Parish Council, Mr. Steve Burgoyne and Mr. Adrian Prosser, who are supporters. If you'd like to come forward to seats in the front here. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. The planning officer is Gillian McDermott, so welcome Gillian, and I'll let you introduce this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I firstly draw members' attention to the update sheet, which I'm just going to read out just so that it's clear in terms of the background information to this application. So, following committee resolution to approve the application on the 22nd of May 2025, the decision was issued on the 23rd of May, and on the 16th of June, a pre-action protocol letter was issued to the council claiming 2 grounds of challenge from the parish council. Officers reviewed the grounds of challenge and took advice from council, where it was concluded the council should consent to the claims. Officers acting upon council advice agreed with the claimant that a consent order should be filed to the High Court. The decision to grant the planning in principle permission was subsequently quashed by the High Court on the 1st of August 2025. The accepted points of contest related to 2 matters in the officer report, which were the way in which the officer had addressed the question of whether there was a housing requirement for the neighbourhood area that had not been met. It was alleged that as a result, paragraph 14 had not been correctly applied. And secondly, even if paragraph 14 of the MPPF had been correctly applied, the planning committee should have been advised that the housing requirement had been met. As the decision was quashed, the determination of the application returns to the local planning authority, and so the purpose of the committee report is to rectify the errors and to enable the application to be redetermined by the planning committee. So as set out in page 20 of the committee report, Harvington's housing requirement is 20 dwellings, and this requirement has already been met. However, as set out in page 25 of the report, the Harvington neighbourhood plan does not include a housing allocation, and therefore paragraph 14 does not apply to the application. So the planning balance and conclusion remains the same in the committee report. So I'll just go through the presentation. So it's for residential development for up to 9 dwellings. This shows the site in relation to the district, so it's north of Evesham. This shows the application site edged in red. So it's on the northwest side of Evesham Road, and to the north is existing residential development at Orchard Place, and to the south and west is agricultural land. This shows the site in its context in relation to the village itself, and which it's on the outskirts of Harvington, but it directly adjoins the development boundary, which is category 2 settlement. This shows an indicative site layout plan, which shows how the dwellings could be arranged in the site, but this will be subsequent to a technical details application should permission in principle be approved. I'll just show you some photographs of the existing site to the site from Evesham Road. This is the view to the northwest. And this is the view northwards towards the existing development at Orchard Place, which you can see in the background there. This is a view from the access along Evesham Road to the northeast. and this is the view to the southwest from the access. So, thank you, Chairman. The recommendation is for permission in principle to be approved.
Thank you very much. I'd like to ask Councillor Gillian Smith, would you have 3 minutes? Thank you very much.
Okay. So firstly, I wish to thank the committee on behalf of Harvington Parish Council and its residents. It was clear at the last meeting many of you were hesitant to vote this application through. You did so on the direction of the planning officer. This has now gone to a review and the decision has been overturned. So you were right to be hesitant and we thank you for that. We now find ourselves in the position of deciding this application again. Harvington Parish Council and the residents of Harvington remain committed to the neighbourhood plan process. As previously stated, volunteers have spent 1,530 hours in production of our plan. Harvington has contributed to the local area housing supply and fulfilled its obligations. The proposed housing development not only exceeds our required allocation, but is adding to the ribbon development outside the development boundary. Harvington does not have a site allocation in the emerging SWDPR as we are a Category 2 village. Harvington Parish Council are currently reviewing its neighbourhood plan again in order to allocate a site acceptable to Harvington residents and fulfil the criteria of the emerging SWDPR. Whilst the current neighbourhood plan does not benefit from the protection afforded by paragraph 14, allegedly, of the NPPF and its relevant housing policy DB1, which is out of date by virtue of the council's current housing land supply situation, harm would still arise from the conflict with the neighbourhood plan. That harm would be a loss of public confidence in the neighbourhood plan process and the ability for local people to have a direct say in how development is brought forward in their area. This harm is exacerbated by the fact the neighbourhood plan has only recently been reviewed and made in February this year. We ask this planning committee to allow us the time to go through proper consultation with the residents of Harvington. The Parish Council will put out call for sites, undertake housing needs survey and other data collection. Ultimately, this will allow the democratic process of creating a new plan to be achieved. The development boundary as laid down by the current neighbourhood development plan should be adhered to as it is part of Wychavon's own development plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now, I don't know who's going to speak. You're both going to speak. You're going to speak. Mr. Burgoyne. Yes, thank you. You have 3 minutes then. Thank you.
Whilst it's obviously disappointing to be back in front of you guys again, we fully understand the reasons why, and it's obviously vital that when you make decisions at this committee, you're in possession of the full facts. The site is 0.795 of a hectare of unused land currently owned by the house adjoined. It's been unused for 20 years plus and the owner occasionally mows it. As we all know, the housing land supply in Wychavon is in severe deficit and everyone in this county needs to group together to share the supply of homes, and Harvington is no different. I do appreciate the hard work done by the parish in restraining the growth of the village. However, the requirement needs to be fulfilled wherever the benefits outweigh the harm, and in this instance, the benefits are clear to see. As a resident of the village, with children at the local school and Evesham close by, I have a good feel for the village and its character. So when the site came to my attention, I was excited primarily by its location within the parish boundary. I thought this little plot could be a great place for families of the village to upscale but still feel part of the community and enjoy the village feel, as the farm shop opposite is an integral part of the community. Oh, I can't breathe. It would also offer affordable housing into the mix for the younger generations. The pathway adjacent to the site can be seen with families walking to the shops regularly and offers a quick walk to the school and other local amenities. The sustainability of the site would positively benefit the village given the proximity to the local schools, village hall, pubs, shops and bus service. A main road straight out of the site and the village and onto the A46 leaves little to no impact of daily traffic into the more heavily inhabited areas of the village, which do peak during school hours. Any further detail will be demonstrated at technical details consent stage, but I can assure you the development will be one of careful consideration to the village's existing appearance and countryside feel, with concentrations of hedgerows along all boundaries and enhancement of existing ones. I respectfully ask the committee to approve the pit once again, along with the officer's recommendations based on its sustainable location and use of land, which will contribute a sensible amount of housing for the village in an appropriate location and to the highest quality possible. Thank you.
Many thanks. The councillor for this area is Councillor Craig Reeves. Would you like to ask any questions or clarification of the speakers, Craig? No, thank you. And the rest of the committee, would you like to ask any questions of the case officer or the speaker? Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to ask Councillor Smith. As I understand it, your understanding of the neighbourhood plan is there's no allocation of houses, and you understand the significance of that. So, and I applaud the fact that you've now asked for sites. How would you feel if this was one of the sites that was put forward?
Actually, that would be really good because, you know, we would love to go through the process of producing a neighbourhood plan properly, and this site, if it was put forward, we would definitely consider it. But ultimately, it would have to be the decision of the village through survey, but as it stands, that would be a good site to allocate.
Well, I'm really pleased to hear that, because it sounds like that when we get to the decision making, it will make our job easier to hear that you are positive about this. Thank you for that.
Yeah, unfortunately, with all this, it's timing.
Thank you. Any other questions, relevant questions? No? No more questions? Okay, thank you. Would you like to, therefore, sorry we're not asking you loads of questions, would you like to return to your seats then? Thank you very much. And I'd then like to ask Councillor Reeves if you'd like to address this committee in a minute. When they've sat down, okay.
Hi, I feel a little bit of deja vu. As mentioned, this is the second time this application has passed through the committee, having already approved. But this is another opportunity to voice the fragility of a neighbourhood plan. When this planning application first crossed the committee's path, I made an impassioned speech that highlighted the flaws and the misfortune for the parish, with a gaping hole in policy that the SWDPR, yet to be adopted, is leaving Harvington with. And having forced the Harvington neighbourhood plan to renew under circumstances set for it to fail. I highlighted that despite the parish council having foresight and building out their allocation for being progressive, with being among the first to adopt a neighbourhood plan, that this situation exploits that timing, and Harvington are defenceless despite the application residing outside of the development boundary. Now, for want of balance, as I mentioned in the previous committee meeting, the application for 9 houses appears sustainable. The developer is, as he says, local and lives within the village, and has been forthcoming with discussion with the parish council. And comparably, set against a development of scale, would appear a better choice to fulfil an allocation had there been one within the plan. So I wish to encourage that, should this application again be approved, to somehow please form part of the future allocation within the neighbourhood plan, which is now being reviewed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. I'll open this to debate to the committee. Do you like to speak? Councillor Morris, thank you.
Being relatively new to all of this, and I still don't full have in my head the neighbourhood plan, maybe some of my other colleagues can advise me. It sounds to me, I get the issue of timing, I get the importance of having a policy that a parish council spend a lot of time and effort on, but I'm picking up the gist that this is a timing issue, and I'm also wondering whether what the parish council wants could be met if this could be, I don't know how it works, but whether this could be put down as an allocation. I pass it over to the rest of my colleagues to see within the neighbourhood plan I'm talking about now.
Kieran?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, I mean, it's quite possible to allocate a site that has planning permission in an emerging plan, and that's what we've seen in the SWDPR. A number of sites that previously were allocated in the 2016 plan are now sort of rolling forward and reallocated. Either they're partly built out. The key is if they're complete, then you normally can't, and that was I think possibly the issue with the previous allocation in the Harvington neighbourhood plan. So there is an opportunity. Obviously, it will come down to timing and when those things happen, but that is possible.
So that's not something we can condition? No. Okay.
No, it's not. But it's part of that plan process and that call for sites sort of separately. I think today really we've got an application in front of us which is been submitted, and we have to consider on the sort of where we are today and where things are. Thank you.
Councillor Kersey?
Chairman, thank you. Can I first of all thank and commend both speakers that have spoken to us today, because they've both spoken very eloquently, but also Councillor Smith has spoken from an extremely informed position. And really, she has made all the points that are the points for committee to consider today. And the point that she made about public confidence in neighbourhood development plan process is a point that I particularly, as I've said in this committee before, near enough my middle name is neighbourhood plan. And this application and the following application for Harvington coming forward has given me great concern that it could potentially undermine public confidence in neighbourhood plans. But thankfully, Councillor Smith understands fully the situation. She's exactly correct in a way that it is all about timing, that we as a committee can only consider what is actually in place today, as opposed to what we may want to be able to do going forward. And exactly as has been stated with regards to the ruling, and Councillor Smith has stated, that when we previously looked at this application, the parish, as far as I remember, hadn't then reviewed their neighbourhood plan and subsequently had that adopted. However, so at that time, the village didn't have an up-to-date, in-date allocation within their neighbourhood plan. Councillor Smith will probably remember that when it was actually adopted in this chamber, my question when I actually commended them for doing the neighbourhood plan was to say, is there a housing allocation in there? And that's for the reason that it's having a housing allocation that's within date, that gives the parish all of the protections and securities that a neighbourhood plan can give, but it is essential to have that allocation within there. Now, I was very pleased to hear Councillor Smith say that they are in the process of reviewing the neighbourhood plan again to ensure that it then has an allocation within there. And Kieran is exactly, you'll be pleased to know, I'm going to say that you were correct, well done. That obviously a planning application with approval can be, unless it's built out, which is the key thing, can be included in a neighbourhood plan as the allocation. And sometimes there's a lot of situations where villages have planning applications that they don't necessarily want. That is the thing that actually prompts them to do a neighbourhood plan, but they can still, again, it's all around timing, include those actual allocations within their neighbourhood plan, which is the key thing. So it is unfortunate that we're in the situation that we're in, but before committee today, we can only consider what is in front of us, and that is a neighbourhood plan that doesn't have a current allocation within it, and therefore I would propose approval in line with the officer recommendation, but I'm extremely pleased to know what Councillor Smith and her colleagues at the Parish Council are planning to do.
Thank you, Councillor Kersey. Councillor Sims? Sorry, I was just, I didn't
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask Gillian, the planning officer, please? What we're now looking at, again, thank you, Charles, is location, land use and amount of development, which goes back to the same PIP sort of points that are the dreaded PIP points that we're trying to decide again today. Yes, that's correct. It's just limited to those three issues.
Yeah, try and do your questions before debate, but there we go. Anybody else like to put a point here? Councillor Morris?
I prepared to second the proposal to approve.
Thank you. Are there any other members of the committee who'd like to say anything? No? Then I think we come to a vote. Can I pass it over to you, Heather, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the recommendation is for approval. So members, can I ask you to raise your voting cards, please? Those in favour? That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. Just to point out, Councillor Reeves, that you can't come back again on that. So say all you have to say when you Thank you. Right, we'll move straight on to item 8, which is application 24/000656, land rear of Sefton Station Road, Harvington, which is where we went for a site visit earlier on. I'd like to welcome again Councillor Gillian Smith and Mrs. Marlene Hills and Mr. Nathan McLaughlin. If you could possibly come to the front, thank you. Before we start this, can we just check that Margaret Rowell is around?
She's gone out.
Is she going to come back for this? Otherwise, she won't be able to vote. Right, we just hang on a minute.
Yeah, if she comes in.
I know she can. I know. Yeah. Thank you very much. We'll just hang on for 1 minute in case she's coming back in. Okay. Thank you. Right. The case officer is Adam White. So, Adam, could I ask you to present this application, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the site comprises a parcel of land to the southeast of Harvington. That shows the general location there. And that's the application site in red there. So the site sits just beyond the settlement boundary of Harvington. It's bound by existing residential properties along Station Road to the southwest and Crest Hill to the southeast. To the west of the site is Harvington playing fields. Immediately to the north of the site is a farmstead with open fields and countryside beyond, and a public right-of-way runs along the northern boundary of the site. Gives you an aerial view there. So the site has varied topography. So the western half of the site is relatively flat. However, on the eastern edge of the site, the land drops down towards the Crest Hill Evesham Road junction. So the site is not subject to any formal or informal landscape designation. It doesn't contain any listed buildings, although the Harvington Conservation Area is located to the south of the site. The site is also within flood zone 1 and therefore at low risk of flooding. So the proposed development is for the erection of 55 dwellings, associated open space, landscaping and infrastructure. So this has been reduced from 58 dwellings, which was originally proposed. So proposed the main access would be taken from Crest Hill, just to the west of the Evesham Road, Crest Hill Junction. Pedestrian, cycle and emergency access via an upgraded field access onto Station Road is also proposed. So that shows you the proposed layout. This is a full application, so it's all detailed. This shows you the sample street scenes of the dwellings there. There's some views of the site here. So this is from the site access, looking up to the site from the site access. Again, this is from the public right-of-way running up the eastern edge of the site. Again, from the public footpath, this is looking towards the village of Harvington. Again, looking across the site to the existing houses on Station Road. And that's looking back down the site towards the site entrance. And again, looking towards the existing village, and that's from the recreation ground. That's looking north towards site, and that existing belt of trees there is ones that are noted in the neighbourhood plan as being retained and protected. That's the end of the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gillian Smith, you have another 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. Harvington Parish Council has serious concerns about this development site. Location. It is outside the neighbourhood development boundary. It is not recommended in the Sheila, reference CFS 0038. It will extend the ribbon development into open countryside away from the nucleated village centre. The higher level ground will make the site visible and not fit the local area, which is contrary to Neighbourhood Plan Policy EH3, which states all new development should have regard to local character, ensuring that new buildings and modifications to existing ones have sympathetic regard to their immediate setting and to the character of that part of the village. SWDP 21 also states that developments need to integrate effectively with its surroundings. Flooding. Such report deems the site unfeasible due to the permeable geology overlaying impermeable geology, causing problems to the surrounding area, to include the nearby highway where pooling will occur. Ditch work is outside development area and requires third-party permissions. If not given, evidence of a credible way to drain the site is required. These unresolved points, together with the uncertainty of third-party land ownership, Harvington Parish Council recommend this application is refused or deferred. Ownership of the access road, the farm track, has not been confirmed. The road is currently maintained by the local farmer. It has not been adopted by Highways or Worcester District County Council, and this issue needs to be resolved. Loss of grade to agricultural land. This field has been used recently to produce wheat, even though the pictures look very weedy, and the adjacent field with similar topography has been farmed successfully for many years. Biodiversity. To ensure there was no conflict with neighbourhood planning policy, an old orchard was deliberately removed without warning or consultation, and whilst I am sure this is allowable practice, it does not sit well with the residents of Harvington. In conclusion, this development is too large for the site. It sits outside the development boundary. It does not fit in with the local conservation area. It has flooding and access issues. I ask you to vote to reject this site or at least defer it until the issues are resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mrs. Marlene Hills, you have 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
And we thought our village of Harvington was old enough, being in the Doomsday Book, but it bears following the dig on that site that it goes much further back than that. The Romans were there, and they built on top of some Neolithical buildings because a fragment was found. This site is important not just for historical purposes, but also for geological purposes. The demonstration of Neolithical and Roman activity on this site is very interesting. The Romans tended to build on Neolithical sites. Why reuse? Why use another site if you can reuse one? This site is important. It overlooks Buckle Street, which leads on to the outskirts of Chipping Campden and Weston along the Foss Way, hence the Romans selected it. These were predominantly, but not exclusively, used for the transportation of salt. The past masters of defensive positions were the Romans. They were a very sort of historically aggressive bunch. And the use of this site is quite possibly fortification, and in which case it is a rare site. Water has always been keen for survival, and the Doomsday Book notes that Harvington had both a church and a mill by that river. In Neolithical periods in the South Midlands, it is very rare to have sites, and this is why this site needs to be looked at specifically and closely. I've consulted with a chief archaeologist who knows this area well and who has read the report. His analysis of this study, he says, I've read the report and it is sufficient to demonstrate that there are significant archaeological deposits on the site. But we are pragmatists and appreciate that whilst preservation in situ may not be possible, we as residents and you as councillors must do our very best to preserve and learn from the findings made. I'm aware of the council's archaeological advisor who requires the developer to excavate the site fully prior to any development. This is an assumption that planning permission is given. We toss away our history as detritus, the loss of future generations. I would ask you at the very least to delay this development until the site can be fully and thoroughly excavated. At the start, I mentioned geological. Terraces in the River Avon in the Evesham Basin contain what they call as fluviologic glacial outwash, gravel, from retreating glaciers. Fossil deposits at Evesham or on Evesham terraces have yielded presence of glacial aerofauna. The water level in the Avon would have been much higher at this point, and terracing to this level of the site in Harvington may well have occurred. The resultant soil extract is a mixture of gravel and sand, and from this it will give us a study of the material composites. I ask you and thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, actually, because that was very interesting. You don't get usually an insight into that side of things in this committee, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Nathan McLaughlin, you have 3 minutes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. My name is Nathan McLaughlin, Managing Director of McLaughlin Planning and the agent for this application. It will come as no surprise to you all that we naturally support the officer's recommendation in his thorough and conclusive committee report. All the issues associated with the development of this site have been resolved, and there are a series of conditions addressing the more fine and nuanced details which inevitably get sorted out in the process. You'll be relieved to hear that I do not intend to repeat the findings of Mr. White's report, but also I'd like to say, in terms of listening to some of the speakers this afternoon, is I'm acutely conscious and sympathetic about the frustrations that the parish council have. Unfortunately, it's not unusual. I work with a number of parish councils across the country bringing forward neighbourhood plans and allocations such as this, and I can understand the position that Harvington has unfortunately found itself in. But this is about meeting the government's housing targets and finding places for people to live. This application is a detailed scheme by Castlethorpe Homes, who's an SME builder, so this small medium enterprise builder. These are the types of developments the government are desperately trying to promote. It's a high quality design-led scheme, and because it's a detailed scheme, what you see on the plans is what you're going to get. It's not outlined, it's not speculative from that point of view. They are seriously committed to delivering this scheme. And this scheme is the culmination of the comprehensive amount of work that's been undertaken, not just by the applicant, but also by the council and the officers and all other interested parties in leading to this end result, which takes into account the policies of your local plan, both adopted and the emerging ones, and the government aspirations for building high-quality homes. And finally, it is this final point. This is about delivering homes, 55 homes, of which a percentage will be affordable housing as required by the SWDP and secured by Section 106 agreement. Chair, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Come to Councillor Reeves again as a ward member. Have any questions to ask any of the speakers? No? Thank you. Committee, have you any questions to ask any of the speakers? Councillor Kersey, followed by Councillor Sims. Councillor Sims, followed by Councillor Kersey. Councillor Sims.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to ask the agent, please. In our report that we get as councillors, there is some concern over the visual impact of the development and how will you, the visual and physical impact of the landscape, how could you, I know that you've got a lot of sort of green edges and open space, how else could you possibly mitigate that building? And I know you've reduced some of that from 58 dwellings to 55. What else could you do to soften that impact on that landscape?
Thank you, Councillor. What I would say is this is a detailed scheme, and as part of the scheme's evolution, we took into account the comments of the council's landscape officer and deliberately pulled development further back from the northern boundary of the site. So, in terms of what we have, ultimately, it's that scheme you have before you. So, the positioning of the houses, the public footpaths, and all the features that's fixed. There's no deviation from that. What we have got is obviously landscaping conditions. So through submission of additional details, it could be sorted out that way.
Thank you. I was just going to ask that I think that's important by softening this hard impact of development. You could use more greenery around the site, which does help actually have an impact on biodiversity as well.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Middleborough. Did you want to speak? Thank you.
Yeah, certainly. A couple of questions to Mr. McLaughlin. There's a village green within the development. I must say that does seem to be a rather strange word for something which is about the size of two of the gardens. Did you consider having a larger village green at the top? But secondly, is it your intention that the open space will be managed by a separate company, or have you entered into discussions with the parish council, or will you enter into discussions with the parish council for them to take over the management of the green space? And I'm afraid I've got another question, if I can just come back on that. It's the location of the bungalows, and I'm not quite sure where the bungalows are located, but if they were on the southeast line of the development, lower buildings there would actually give people from the more central part of the site a continued or a less interrupted view of the landscape to the southeast and the hills. So, sorry to go on a bit on those questions.
Would you like to? Okay.
Certainly, Chair. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor. In terms of the provision of green space on the site and the village green, when we're preparing a scheme for the site, we obviously look at the provisions of the local plan in terms of the open space standards that are required. And what we've done is we've met and exceeded that. As part of the scheme's evolution, if you look at the site's access road so we look at what's on screen, and starting from right and moving to left, you'll obviously see the road winds round a little bit, if you will. One of the things we were proposing to put into the scheme as by way of a sort of community benefit in terms of creating some activity and interest in the area was a shallow amphitheatre for children to meet and play, which we were advised to remove on the basis of objections from the parish council. So in terms of your point about the village green, we have looked at this, and this is very much how the scheme has evolved. Turning to your point about Manco, traditionally we have found that these sites such as this inevitably fall within the remit of a management company. It's the fairest means by far, because what it avoids doing is parish councils being lumbered with sizable maintenance liabilities, because there is always an inevitable question of who's responsible for what, especially when you try to separate some of the suds elements of a scheme. So it would be our preference for it to be in a management company from that side of things, because we don't want to unnecessarily burden the parish council with that. And also it turns into a question of how much money would the parish council expect by way of a commuted sum payment to help manage the area in the long term. Finally, in terms of the position of the bungalows, I must admit that you've got me a slight disadvantage here. I can't necessarily recall exactly where the bungalows were positioned on the site.
Sorry, if I can just help. They are all on the southern edge. So as you see the bottom bit as it curls round, all of those are the bungalows on that edge there.
But they were put in at the request of the officers through the consultation process. So it's very much an evolution and collaborative way of developing this site.
Thank you. Does that answer your questions, Paul? Thank you. Okay, Councillor Kersey.
Chairman, thank you. First of all, a question, if I may, please, to Councillor Smith. In EH2 of Harvington Neighbourhood Plan, which is local green spaces, is there any part whatsoever of this site that is an allocated local green space?
Originally, when we did our neighbourhood plan, we tried to make it a green space because it was a popular working area. Unfortunately, the landowner objected, so we couldn't. So the answer is no.
Right, okay. A landowner can't object to it being allocated as local green space within a neighbourhood plan. So, okay, we'll come on to that maybe for when you're reviewing your neighbourhood plan. Okay, so then some questions to the agent, please. First of all, how would you say you've responded to EH3 within the neighbourhood plan in your application?
I'm sorry, for the purpose of this, would you mind repeating what the provisions of EH3 say?
Oh, that's a little disappointing. So the EH3 policy within the neighbourhood development plan, which obviously you needed to comply with, is responding to local character. And the parish council have specifically pointed out that they don't believe this does respond to the local character. So could you tell me how you've responded to that policy within the neighbourhood plan, which obviously is a policy that you must consider?
Certainly it's policy you must consider, but equally you'll note we don't have any design concerns raised by the officer in his determination of the application.
Okay, thank you. That tells me that you didn't consider that policy within the neighbourhood plan. My next question for you is around density. The density is showing as 24 dwellings per hectare, I believe. Can you tell me what part of the site that 24 is calculated on? Is that the whole site or is that just the developed part of the site?
It's the net developable area.
Okay, so just the top, basically. Okay, and then we go on to green infrastructure. I was interested to know that you say that you've exceeded the requirements for green infrastructure. That is from the report by 1%, because you need to give 40%, and you saying that you're given 41. But could you tell me, out of that 41% green infrastructure, how much of that is excluding the roads and the infrastructure that needs to be put in place, and how much of that 41% is as per the definition of green infrastructure that it needs to be open and recreational?
Well, I'll turn your attention to the officers' committee report, and actually, if you look at the plan that we have in front of you, those areas of green space, which at the most basic level starts around the perimeter of the site, moving from left to right, and then it goes off to the far right extension of it. That is all publicly accessible.
Okay. The reason why I was asking the question is because obviously I've already read the report. Could you, just to pacify me, tell me what percentage of green infrastructure is open and recreational, i.e. does not involve anything that involves the road, and it is open and recreational? For example, you're not going to have some children playing on the road, hopefully.
Sorry, forgive me. I've trying to understand the relevance of this question, because ultimately we meet the open space requirement as per the plan, as recognised in the officer's report. That space is open, it's unfettered for public access, children, adults alike. So what's the issue with the percentage?
Okay, I'll take that you don't know the percentage.
It's 41% as per the report.
Okay, my question was not what is the percentage of the green infrastructure that's on that site, what is the percentage of the green infrastructure that is open and recreational?
Well, all of it.
All of the 41%?
Yes.
Okay. So I then go on to my sort of sub-question to that, if you like. What provision is going to be made on site? Because obviously you've got section 106 for off-site provision for sports and recreation, which led me on to my initial question, was to say what percentage of green infrastructure do you have that's open and recreational that would lead you to need to have off-site recreational facilities?
Well, that element of it is also, it's part and parcel of what the plan ultimately seeks. In terms of open space provision and play space provision, I assume you're talking about formal sports and leisure in the Section 106 part of the report, where there's an identified contribution of £43,000 for built sports contribution and roughly £105,000 for formal sports contribution.
That's what I'm referring you to of the off-site Section 106 contributions.
Typically,
what is there that's on the site? Because if we're looking at 55 homes, potentially 55 families or 40 families, what is on that site that's recreational within that 41% of green infrastructure that those families could use?
Well, in terms of what they can use all the green space on the site. What we're looking at here, in terms of looking at your question, is what is being provided by way of formal provision off-site. Now, in terms of the need for formal off-site provision, you can't build a third of a football pitch, by way of example. And Harvington and this site, well, so if we start with the site, in terms of its location, it's immediately adjacent to the play area situated just to the left of the western boundary of the site, which has a football pitch and some play equipment there. To the east of the site, just off to the right of the plan, is obviously other sports pitches. That's an ideal place to provide financial contributions to support those facilities, rather than trying to provide a bit piece on the site.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think you've reinforced my concern over the fact that the 41% green infrastructure includes the green spaces surrounding the roads. Okay, thank you, Chairman.
I think the 41% would be very good for sledging, actually, but not a lot more. That's just an off-the-cuff remark, because it's a hill. And we hadn't realised to the site visit how much of a gradient it was. So I understand how Councillor Curtis is coming from. Councillor Clackworthy, followed by Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Chairman. Question, please, for the agent. I was looking at the street scenes. Maybe I need to go back to the opticians, because I hadn't seen any street scenes of bungalows, but obviously that was brought up by a previous question, and there are. Can I ask you, of the 55 properties, how many will be bungalows, and will those bungalows all be wheelchair disability accessible throughout their build?
Memory serves, it will be 4 bungalows on site, and they will be built to the required standard for wheelchair accessibility.
So it's 4 of 55 is quite a small number, really, isn't it? When you consider the number of people potentially nowadays with wheelchairs, motorised scooters, etc., and have disabilities and disablements where they need a single-storey property.
It's but worth saying there isn't a policy requirement for bungalows, so it's what's negotiated. That's the point, really, I think. Okay. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm referring to the drainage issues. And I'd like to ask a question of the agent. The report says that a surface level sustainable drainage system was excluded. I'd like really to know on what technical basis that was and why there was no attempt made to resolve that issue in order to maintain a surface level sustainable drainage system.
Certainly. I mean, this is in terms of providing swales and drainage ponds up in the main bulk of the site, effectively provide features that sort of enhance biodiversity. Simply put, we tried, but it's a question of levels and topography. Water. No, if you allow me to finish. We spent a lot of time talking this through with the LLFA and the council's drainage officer. Ultimately, and not to put too fine a point on it, water goes downhill, as we all well know. Now, in order to provide a functional swale and drainage pond up on the main area of the site where the housing's been provided, and then discharged down onto the Station Road, you've got to have very, very deep drainage pipes running underground, and it's simply not feasible. Believe you me, Councillor, this is something we have looked at an awful lot and discussed at length, technically with officers. And it's just regrettable we simply couldn't make that solution work. the LLFA were very adamant in terms of what they were looking for by way of swales and ponds, and we tried our best to achieve it for them, but we couldn't.
Thank you. Have you anything to add to that, Andrew?
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Can we have the location planner, please? No, sorry, the layout, beg your pardon. Yeah, that one. So the drainage strategy basically provides storage within attenuation cells under the LAP. So the main spine road and dwellings will drain to those attenuation cells. The private roads that come off will be drained with permeable paving. So then the outfall from those attenuation cells will be restricted to the Greenfield runoff rate. And it's then going to go into a filter trench either side of that access road. So just to the right of the LAP area, I think, is it a viewpoint? Is that what's on that plan? Right. So that's the point at which the filter drain trenches will go either side of the access road. You can just about see those on that plan. Right at the very bottom of the site, there'll be another restriction device which will force any surplus flows that come off to the road into another attenuation cell, and then you're going to have a new drain which will then come out of the site and down to the point of discharge, which is just to the west of the old Harvington bypass. So you do have elements of sustainable drainage in there, albeit it's not a pond.
Many thanks. Are there any more relevant questions for the speakers before we move on? No, thank you. Thank you for speaking, and would you like to return to your seats? Thank you. Again, Board Members, Councillor Reeves, and I'll ask him to address the committee in a minute. Okay. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, councillors, for the detailed questions there as well. This application has been sitting in the wings long before I was elected, and it's been looming overhead like a rain cloud getting ready to pour. Today, with recommendation for approval by Wychavon, the Harvington Neighbourhood Plan's metaphorical umbrella looks to be defenceless against the paragraph 14 thunderclap. When does this council lean into the weight of the impending SWDP adoption? We're told that the current iteration with minor amends will see the policy adopted on, if not ahead of time. And to quote Wychavon, the inspectors have released their findings, which confirm with some changes that the SWDPR is likely to be found sound and legally compliant. I've been told that as the SWDP review gains momentum and looks to be adopted, we as a council should lean into this policy, especially when considering projects that will overlap the SWDPR's adoption, and that doesn't seem to be happening here. Now, reviewing the impending SWDP, Harvington and this site, in part under the reference of CFS 0038A, forms, and I must stress in part, a potential allocation. The northern westerly corner leading onto Copper Beach Close is outlined as a potential site. This proposed boundary outline is around about a tenth of the current site's proposal. This development could play a role in the future allocation within the neighbourhood plan, as it suggests it is in the impending SWDPR documentation, but it should be done so in the right way, as a proposed site and voted upon locally. When can this council begin to protect villages from overdevelopment and uphold the sanctity of the neighbourhood plans that it proudly promotes and supports? I'm sure this committee needs no reminding of how complex and lengthy a neighbourhood plan is to adopt and review, yet it seems to be the first to be dismissed. We are told that legally the nullification of paragraph 14 gives strength to Wychavon, who are obligated to approve, and Harvington is to take a bullet for the Wychavon housing needs. Unfortunately, that camaraderie isn't the feeling amongst residents, with the correspondence I received being very much in line with the weight of local objections seen within the consultation. That's 49 objections with only 3 in support. The reality is, with the decision just made in the previous hearing of 9 dwellings, Harvington is potentially about to receive a staggering 64 new houses, all of which will not form part of the allocation of a future neighbourhood plan, and all of which work against the principles of the plan that so many have tirelessly designed and fought for. Access to Crest Hill. Albeit the latest report demonstrates an improved iteration of the design, the junction at the base of Crest Hill leading onto Evesham Road is dangerous. I used to sit in my front room 2 doors up from this junction and listen to the crunching of metal as cars collided. I would please request that a condition be placed to improve that junction as part of the works. That's paint, signage, potentially a reduction from the national speed limit to lesser that accommodates an increased use of that junction. Furthermore, Crest Hill has had a recent influx of vehicles parking along the residential path side, which causes potential visibility issues, impairing the view up and down the hill from that side of the road. May we explore options that work for the residents of these households that promotes safer road navigation. To add, I have had correspondence from the neighbouring farmer who has had correspondence dating back as far as the 1980s with Worcestershire County Council that tells him that Worcestershire County Council do not own or is responsible for said access road. And I'd urge that a condition be placed or to defer this application until a potential legal matter over this lane's ownership is resolved. With regards to drainage, Harvington has its fair share of drainage issues, as I'm sure you can tell us. And Crest Hill is no different and becomes a river during a downpour. So I ask the committee, do you believe the drainage issues that we have spoken of to be sufficient? As we have already heard today by passionate local historian Mrs Hills, I request that the historical, significant and potentially rare Neolithical remains are respected and time allowed for further excavation prior to development. Now, shy of a mile away, Norton has endured a frustrating experience with the condition of an incomplete and habited development where the developer dissolved as the new homeowners exchanged. This site is completely unconnected with this application. However, and without prejudice to the applicant here today, but for want of protecting future home buyers and to ensure that the proposed developed space doesn't result in a similar situation, please can we explore and include conditions that best protect the future of the development? And I refer to the House of Commons Unfinished Housing Development Document of 2024, in particular section 2.2, which states a local planning authority can also use planning conditions to require a development to proceed in a certain order or require a particular element of a scheme to be finished for the buildings to be occupied. As we see a growing number of financial issues resulting in unfinished developments, I request that we as a council mitigate against any future issues with implementing these conditions. I not only encourage it here, but on all applications of scale that cross our path. Now, for want of balance, the proposed Section 106 money is welcome. The developer, having collaborated to the wants and needs of the village with respect to adjusting the design, has been noted, and the affordable houses that the village will result in as part of this plan is also welcome. So to reiterate my frustration and concern with this and any application that comes to the table in this vein is that it contravenes Harvington's hard work. And I've written to Wychavon's Head of Planning and Chief Executive with my concerns on how neighbourhood plan policy simply dissolves during times of policy crossover. We should be writing into our plans fail-safes that work in favour of the neighbourhood plan instead of empowering developers, and it just seems madness. Based, again, on the success of the previous application, should this application also be approved, to reiterate once more, Harvington will see 64 new houses built outside of any future allocation and against the principles of the plan. I request that this application, should it be approved, work with the Parish Council in Wychavon to ensure that the number of dwellings works with the neighbourhood plan and fulfils any future allocation. Finally, I support growth, I support affordable housing, and I do so by supporting the neighbourhood plan. The plan's intent is to give the villagers a voice and steer the growth that works for the village. Yet in my short tenure as councillor, I'm yet to see that plan hold any weight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll open it to debate. Thank you. Councillor Middlebury.
Thank you, Chairman. Following on from the questions that I put, if we were to approve this plan, I noticed there is the green open space, and I would like to ensure that that green open space is properly managed. And the best way for that to be managed is through the public authority, the parish council. And I would hope that we could put a condition which would implore the developer to work to come to an arrangement with the parish council to take on that green open space. There will be financial consequences. I notice that there's no play area within the development. There is a village green, which is sort of 2 lawns, as I said earlier, but that doesn't strike me as being an appropriate play area. And I leave other members perhaps to raise issues on that. But I would really like to see those 5 bungalows to be on the southeast and not on the north to northeast corner, because I think it would it would make the impact looking from the southeast significantly less than it is at the moment. But I certainly would like to see a condition about the management of the green open space.
Thank you, Councillor Middlebury. Kieran, would you like to answer one or two of those?
Yeah, thank you. I was going to pick up the sort of management of the public open space. I mean, what can be included within a Section 106 is an opportunity for the land to be offered to the parish council with a commuted sum. It needs to be discussed and negotiated with the developer as an option, but it can be included in a draft. So that's something that officers could explore should the resolution be to approve as the recommendation, and we could try to explore that as an option. Obviously, we'd want to discuss that with the parish as if that's something that they would like to explore. In that case, they wouldn't be obliged to take it on, but they would have the option usually. So that's one mechanism that could, and then if they weren't to take it on, then it would fall to normally a management company. So there is, the maintenance is secured one way or another. But like I said, we'd have to get agreement, but there is a possibility to include that subject to agreement, really.
Thank you. Are there any other points on this application? Councillor Tucker.
Thank you, Chairman. Following on from the points or the question I raised about the drainage issues, I am concerned here that this development does not comply with our SWDP policy 29, requiring sustainable drainage systems to be installed. With the best will in the world and with many years of experience of dealing with sustainable drainage systems, this does not, in the remotest way, comply with being a sustainable drainage system. Something which is entirely underground, albeit there may be some swales around beside the road, does not really class as a sustainable drainage system, nor does it meet our policy. And I have to say that our policy, SWDP 29, seems to be passed over in far too many cases, because the single sole concern that seems to be coming forward in so many of these developments is attenuation of volume. And I would just remind members that in order to meet a properly sustainable drainage system, you're talking about water volume, you're talking about water quality, you're talking about amenity, and you're talking about enhancement of biodiversity, the 4 pillars of the sustainable drainage equation. I really don't, and I must admit I haven't looked at in the detail of this, but I really don't on the face of it see why it is not possible to put in a surface level sustainable drainage pond, which would enhance biodiversity and amenity and also quality. Having underground systems really does not cut it when it comes to dealing with a site of this nature, or in dealing with a substantial development. And again, I heard what Andrew said about the possibility of having a further underground tank at the bottom of the site. I see no reason why that could not be an open pond, achieving the environmental benefits which I mentioned. So, Chairman, I feel that this application should be deferred for further discussion about what maybe members would consider merely a technical issue, but really is a matter of policy and complying with our SWDP 29. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Tucker. There are lots of conditions attached. Kieran, would you like to just outline that condition for me?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So, I mean, the technical consultees we've received have suggested a condition to deal with the matter. I think ultimately there is discussion to be had and judgment to be made on whether the proposals fully comply with SWDP 29 or not. But ultimately, the mitigation measures that are available are considered that there could be a scheme. And I think condition 20 deals with the requirement for the information submitted in terms of the maintenance and management and implementation of the sustainable urban drainage surface water. And there's a number of things that they need to do, and that's in response to the lead local flood authority's comments. So that's how it's been dealt with. Ultimately, there appears to be a technical solution that's acceptable to the consultees, and the conditions being included within the suggested conditions by officers in the report. So on technical grounds, it is a technical matter as mentioned, but there isn't anything that suggests that it couldn't be dealt with, and information gives us, the conditions give the council control to approve the details that come forward, and that's how that matter's been addressed so far.
Thank you. Councillor Della.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I guess I'm slightly. It's always sad when you lose good agricultural land. I think that's always a shame. I think that if we could avoid that, that is ideal. And I didn't get to go to the site visit today, and so to see what the landscape view harm would be. However, with all that in mind, the benefits of this site I feel outweigh the negatives. I think I really like the tenure mix from the affordable element. I think the addition of the 8 one-bedroom properties is really key. I think having one-bedroom properties, when you look at our housing list, one-bedroom properties is one of the biggest demands we have. So it's good to see a good number of that. And as I say, the addition of bungalows, with a lot of sites not wanting to build bungalows, I think that is key due to the land mass they take off. So forgive me as a sub, I would propose acceptance in line with the officer recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Kersey.
Chairman, thank you. Every single thing that I said for the first application that we've heard today very much stands. In having, as somebody that's lost probably 2 years to my life that I'm never going to get back, doing a neighbourhood plan, I absolutely understand, particularly the importance of neighbourhood plans, but I very much understand the work that goes into them. So I totally understand the frustration. To Councillor Reeves, I would urge you that sitting on this planning committee, please don't think that we do not feel the amount of frustration and concern that you do, because we feel it every month and we feel that burden upon us. So I don't know as far as the political balance is concerned, but I would in this chamber today urge you to seek to see if you can actually secure a place on the planning committee, because I would welcome sharing that frustration and concern, because it is exactly as you say, we are in a situation that the government's housing numbers that have been thrust upon us and all of the concerns that are around that. However, on a slightly positive note, as I said earlier, I'm very pleased to hear everything that Councillor Smith had said that the Parish Council are doing. And if it's any consolation, that the numbers that within this are, because they are in the South Worcestershire Development Plan review, then it means that potentially this piece of land would be built out anyway. But it does mean that during that neighbourhood plan process, which would be adopted hopefully after the South Worcestershire Development Plan review had been adopted, you could include these numbers, which would mean you wouldn't need to seek to have additional numbers within the neighbourhood plan, which would very much give you that umbrella, albeit it's a bigger umbrella than you wanted to have, or should I say a bigger rainstorm than you wanted to have, but it would give you all those protections. As you can probably gather, I was not at all happy with anything that I've heard from the agent, because it basically told me that they hadn't considered the policies within the neighbourhood plan. However, because there is a neighbourhood plan in place, albeit the fact that there isn't an allocation in there, all of the other policies do have to be considered. And I'm pleased to see that our officers have considered those policies within their determination. And so there are changes around design, there's changing around the trees, and many things within there that our officers have taken into account of the neighbourhood plan. There's many things that I'm not at all happy with this application, particularly around the green infrastructure. The applicant doesn't know what is open and recreational. We're expected to say that children are going to play along the green that's around the road, that clearly on that elevation, that is essential to have that green space. You can't build a house there. So there are many concerns that I have around this, although unfortunately, there isn't enough concerns, as per our officer's report, to do anything with this in the current situation that we're in, other than to approve it. But I would really urge and welcome the parish council doing everything that they are doing to then review their neighbourhood plan, have it adopted with this as a housing allocation, and it will very much give them that full protection going forward, because also it will give them the protection for longer, because it will achieve the government's higher numbers that they've inflicted upon us. So I would second Councillor Della's proposal for approval, but I would want that to be adapted, if Councillor Della is willing, please, to condition the fact that within the section 106 that it needs the play area, the green space needs to be offered to the parish council first of all, and as the applicant said, they didn't want to put a burden on the parish council because fundamentally it would involve a commuted sum. Well, I would like that to be that the situation is that the parish council get first refusal on that, and obviously I would urge the agent within that to ensure that the commuted sum is the proper commuted sum, which would enable the parish council to look after the green infrastructure if they so wish.
Thank you, Councillor Kersey. Councillor Sims.
Thank you. I know we've done questions, but I forgot to ask this, which is very important. But it's really about conditioning sort of the renewable and carbon energy of the homes, if that would be
condition on that.
possible. I couldn't see it in the conditions, but I noticed that it's SWDP.
We'll just have a look for a condition,
So,
I'm sure.
But I do think that's really important. There is some measure. I know it's 10%, I think, isn't it? Sorry.
Sorry, yes, it's condition 17.
Sorry, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sims. No more comments. Well, thank you. Thank you for that debate. And we have a proposal from Councillor Della and a second from Councillor Kersey with the conditions. Over to you. Thank you, Heather.
Can I just check first, please, Councillor Della, are you happy to agree the amendment? Yeah, thank you very much. So your voting members to grant planning permission as per the officer recommendation as set out in the report, but subject to inclusion in a section 106 agreement that the open space on the site will be offered in the first instance to the parish council, so they'll be given first refusal together with an appropriate commuted sum. Obviously, if they choose not to take that up, then we would still include the management company option within the 106. So just to make that clear, yeah. So those in favour, please, if you could raise your voting cards. That's unanimous, Chair.
No, I think Charles took it.
Oh, I beg your pardon. Those against, sorry. It was because I had one less last time because Margaret was left the room. So apologies, Councillor Tucker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you, speakers. If you'd like to go, or you can stay by all means for the rest of the afternoon. Thank you, Councillor Reeves. I think I'm going to have one more. I know Councillor Kersey likes to stop at an hour and a half, but I'm afraid we're going to do one more before a break. So moving pretty rapidly on. Are you okay, Councillor Reeves? Moving on. Moving on to number 9. If you're agreeable, committee, we're going to take these two together. We will vote on them separately, but they are intrinsically joined together. One's sort of listed at B, 9B, so I shall take it as you wish that they could be joined. Could you concentrate, please? Thank you. Yes, just to welcome Craig Tibbett and also Victoria Finch. Thank you. Right. Planning application 25 Leago 01264, Tudor Cottage, Abbots Morton Road, Abbots Morton. This is a proposed extension. This is a site visit this morning, as you well know. We have one speaker, Mr. Nick Baker. Sorry, Mr. Nick Baker, would you like to come and thank you? You're on your own this afternoon. Thank you. And as I said, Victoria Finch is going to just present this. Over to you, Victoria, when you're ready. Sorry, I have a slight technical hitch. Are you okay? Over to you, Victoria. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for a proposed extension and replacement of dormer coverings to the north elevation of Grade 2 listed Tudor Cottage, Abbots Morton. The site is located in the village of Abbots Morton to the northeast of the district. This is the site location plan. Again, this shows the location with an aerial view of the site. The host dwelling is a 1.5-storey detached dwelling and is the first property when approaching Abbots Morton from the east along Abbots Morton Road. This slide shows a comparison of the existing and proposed floor plans. It shows the 1.5-storey extension would be to the rear of the dwelling. This is the existing elevations. It shows the original black and white timber frame cottage with a glass link to the 1970s addition. This is the proposed elevations. It shows the original black and white timber frame cottage. This is the proposed elevations showing the proposed rear extension and replacement dormer coverings. It also shows the existing rear window of a modern extension which would be replaced by a set of French doors. This photo shows the rear elevation of the original 17th century building. It shows the north-facing dormer windows and the ground floor window that is to be replaced. This is where the extension would be located on the 1970s half of the dwelling. This is a photo of the rear of Tudor Cottage, showing both the original and the 1970s buildings. This is the view of the front of the property. The recommendation is one of refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Nick Baker, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The proposal before committee is recommended for refusal by the Heritage team. However, the plans were created in consultation with a Wychavon Heritage officer with a statement of support for these exact plans. On 30th of April this year, as part of the Council's pre-application advice service, a Heritage officer visited our home along with our architects. Together, we reviewed our initial plans and made 3 major reductions to reduce the heritage impact. On that basis, the officer provided a written statement confirming support for the revised proposal. We submitted our planning application in good faith, relying on that professional advice from the Heritage team. Our application was then assigned to a different Heritage officer who objected on the grounds that the house has been overdeveloped. They claim that modern extensions have increased the livable area by 160%. However, this officer's measurements are wrong by a factor of 2 to 3 times, meaning the figure of 160% is similarly inaccurate. Independent measurements from our architect and estate agent confirm the true figure is only 101%. Our proposal adds just 10% more. I have a plan here showing the relative dimensions if anyone would like to see it. This extension has been carefully designed to protect the historic assets. It sits entirely on the 1970s brick side of the house, as far away from the Elizabethan cottage as possible. It is hidden from public view and does not abut the heritage fabric. This ensures the historic building remains the focal point and is untouched by the modification. My wife and I care deeply about the historic nature of our property. We've spent 4 years carrying out extensive repairs to reverse years of decline. The house also struggled to sell and sat vacant for over a year back in 2021. The feedback from potential buyers was always the same, that the split layout is not suitable for families. Our proposal to add a child's bedroom to the modern side of the house would change this and thus ensure the long-term viable use of this listed building for family life. Our plans are also strongly supported by our village. The report provided by the planning team shows only 1 letter of support on the listed building application. I wish to point out that there are a further 7 letters of support on the linked householder planning. Our neighbours recognise our restoration efforts and are highly in favour of encouraging more young families to the village rather than excluding them. Committee, there is open disagreement within the heritage team. On one side, an officer who visited the site found a suitable compromise and supports the plans. On the other, an officer who has not visited the site and has based their objection on inaccurate calculations. The Head of Urban Design, Ecology and Conservation, Rebecca Lee Hart, herself described this as a marginal case from the heritage perspective. In this context, I respectfully ask you to consider the overwhelming neighbour support, the fact that these plans were considered acceptable just 4 months ago, and above all, the community benefit of sustaining a listed building by adapting it sensitively for modern family use. I therefore urge you to grant approval. Thank you.
Many thanks. The ward members are Councillor Nick Dawkes and Ben Herdman. Councillor Dawkes is obviously not here today, but Councillor Herdman, have any questions to ask either the case officer or Mr Baker? No? I'll open it to the rest of the committee. Have any questions to ask either? Emma, sorry, Councillor Kersey. I can see your hand up this time.
Can't believe you didn't look my way, Chairman. A question, please, to Craig. I presume that you are the officer that the applicant is referring to. Have you now visited the site?
Okay. In answer to the question, there have been numerous applications at this site over the past. Well, I've been doing this job for 7 years now, and I am very familiar with the site. Likewise, I am familiar with a great deal of the list of buildings in the village, having been into most of them. Sorry, can you just reiterate the rest of your question? Sorry.
It was only just one question, really, Craig, is to say, have you visited the site? And if you have, when did you last visit the site?
Admittedly, it was probably 2 or 3 years ago that I visited the site. I visited, last I went there was when there was a repair for the gable end, because the gable end of the historic building was leaning, I believe, it was about 5 or 10 degrees, but that's only from memory. And it was essentially to straighten that up. That was the application.
Okay, thank you. And to the applicant, you mentioned that based on the original pre-app advice that you were given, you made some changes to the application. Could you take us through what those changes were, please, that you were asked to do?
Certainly. So our original plans that were submitted to pre-application were twofold. One, largely the extension that is here today on the 1970s side. There was a further extension on the Elizabethan cottage side. The advice that we received was that touching anywhere near that heritage fabric was not acceptable, so we removed that entirely. That was modification number 1. Number 2 was to reduce the footprint of the 1970s extension by 20%, and further to change the straight gable end into a hipped roof with a Dutch gable end.
And you've made all those changes that you were asked to make?
Yes, we have.
Thank you. Any other further questions? Councillor Morris?
Could we have some clarification on the increase in size of the livable area? Because I don't feel like we've got an answer to that, please. There seems to be a dispute.
Am I okay to answer that one, sorry? Okay. Is it possible to bring up the layout again? Thank you. Okay, so if you look at those drawings, particularly looking at the top left with the yellow and the pink for clarity, the historic building, the 17th century core is simply those those three rooms in the bottom left-hand corner. Everything else is an extension. And with regard to what's happened on the site, so with regard to the planning process, this case went through a pre-application process, and then it came through to the planning application. Unfortunately, unknown to us at the time, there was also a separate conversation that was been having via email with one of my colleagues with regard to the I can't get into why there was a differentiate. Unfortunately, Rosie isn't in the office at the moment because she's on sick, and I'm not in a place to explain what her decision was. All I can tell you is how I've come to this conclusion. I did the measurements of the three rooms in the corner, and then which are the historic core, and then took a measurement of the extension on the back of that and the pink extension on the side. That's how I arrived at a 160% increase, because as you can see, it is a massive increase on the original three rooms. But I believe in the meeting which I had with the applicant and their agent, this was on Teams a few weeks ago, their agent came up to a figure of 130% increase. So it was slightly different to mine. But regardless, if you take their figure into consideration, and just to give you an example, if you think the historic building has 1,000 square foot floor plan, and then you think it's been increased by 130%, which means this historic 17th century building, which has hypothetically a 1,000 square foot floor plan, has been increased to 2,300 square feet. And now we're looking at increasing it further. Admittedly, those numbers are hypothetical, but it does illustrate that this is a sizable addition on the original building as it is, without extending it further. Does that make sense?
Thank you.
If I may, on that one, the numbers that Craig came up with are twofold what our architects and what our estate agents have. He has put the total livable area at about 500 metres squared, and the two independent measurements from the estate agent and our architects put that at 250. So there's a twofold increase there. And if I could point out one further inconsistency from the heritage team advice, is that the two rooms at the top in yellow on this plan that Craig is referring to as a modern addition has always been in discussion with the heritage team in my 4 years of ownership, being part of the historic fabric. That is not, in my view, a modern addition. That is a late 1800s addition, which I do not believe constitutes modern, and has always been dealt with as part of the historic core.
Thank you. That's helpful. Are we any more relevant questions at all? No? Well, thank you, Mr. Baker, for your comments. Could you like to return to your seat? Thank you. And I'll ask Councillor Herdman to speak to the committee. Thank you, Councillor Herdman.
Thank you, Chair. I've called this application to committee due to what I feel is a significant public interest, strong local support, and the conflicting advice received from the Council's heritage officers. This proposal seeks a modest two-storey extension to the rear of Tudor Cottage, a Grade 2 listed building located within the Abbots Moreton Conservation Area. The applicants, Mr. and Mrs. Baker, have demonstrated a long-standing commitment to the sensitive restoration and stewardship of this historic property. The officer recommendation is for refusal, citing cumulative impact and design concerns. And while I respect the Conservation Officer's view, I must draw attention to the conflicting pre-application advice from a senior heritage officer who stated they were happy to support the scheme and would not like to argue it at an inspector level as it's been designed well. This inconsistency has understandably caused confusion. One officer who visited the site supported the plans. Another officer who hasn't visited recently objects based on calculations that are being disputed by the applicant. The village of Abbots Moreton has around 70 houses. The application has received 7 letters of support from neighbours, as well as no objection from the parish council. And these comments consistently highlight the discrete location of the extension, the importance of retaining young families in the village, the applicant's track record of high-quality, sympathetic renovations. The owners have spent 4 years restoring this property, and the house was vacant for over a year in 2021, partly due to its unsuitable layout for families. The proposed extension, which incorporates a child's bedroom, would make the house more viable for modern family life, and the proposed extension is located at the far eastern end of the 1970s addition, away from the historic core, and is not visible to the public. It's designed to meet the evolving needs of a growing family by enabling their child to be able to sleep in the vicinity of its parents, without compromising the integrity of the original building. The applicants have provided ecological and arboricultural reports which have been deemed satisfactory. And in line with paragraph 215 of the MPPF, I believe the less than substantial harm identified must be weighed against the public benefits. In this case, the social sustainability of the village, the continued care of a historic home by engaged and responsible owners, and enabling these owners to all live in the same half of the property. I urge the committee to consider whether this small, well-considered extension truly undermines the heritage value of the property, or whether it represents a reasonable evolution of a family home in Abbots Moreton.
Thank you, Councillor Headman. I'll open it to the rest of the committee. Councillor Sims, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. You know, looking at this house, and it is often the case that these very old properties have had through the years extensions as different families use the dwellings, and it's obviously been a tiny cottage back in the 17th century perhaps. New additions come in with families that grow, etc., and houses have to evolve with how people live in the day-to-day. And I think this is absolutely a classic case of an evolution of this house, and I think it's great, actually. I totally understand the Heritage Officer's view and points about the cumulative impact of these lovely old Grade 2 listed houses, and I think that's absolutely right. But I have no problem, actually, with sort of development sensitively and improvements to this Grade 2 property, if it's preserving its character and that it is, you know, sensitive to the way it is at the moment. So I just think these houses just have to stretch with how we live today. So unfortunately, I don't really see a massive issue with this extension.
You're not proposing anything at the moment. Okay, Councillor Kersey.
Chairman, thank you. It's been very useful to hear the history of the property and that it was left vacant for a period of time and for the specific reasons that the current owners want to extend it. People who own historic buildings and listed historical buildings, thankfully, the majority of them see themselves as custodians of those buildings, and it's regularly people that live in listed buildings say that, you know, they know that they're only custodians of them for a period of time. And people like the applicant do take that fact that they are custodians of those historical buildings very seriously, and I believe that the applicant has done exactly that and wants to continue to do that by actually preserving sensitively this historical building. Now, we went on a site visit today, and I understand the legality behind the fact that the whole of the building needs to be considered as a listed building. And if the modern 1970s extension was put before us today, I imagine that the majority of us would want that to be refused. However, that's not what's before us today. What's before us today is the existing historical building with the 1970s extension that is all classed as a listed building, and to what is all now there, we are then asked to consider this small extension. Now, I believe the balance here is, do we take the officer's view, which is calculating percentages around what is the listed building, the original listed building, and what isn't, or do we look at the practicalities of enabling a young family who are clearly taking very seriously the fact that they are custodians of a listed historical building very seriously? And also, if we looked at the category of what needs to happen with a listed building if you're making changes to it, and there needed to be public benefit, which incidentally I don't believe that there needs to be, because I can't actually see less than substantial harm in this application. But there would be a very strong case to say that the public benefit of this would be retaining a young family within the community of a very small village, would we even say a hamlet, of 70 people. So if we needed to do that, then I think that absolutely demonstrates the public benefit. However, I think that this actually does not give any harm, and there is an argument to say that it is enhancing the property because it is allowing more practical use to allow those custodians to continue to preserve that listed historical building. So on that basis, I will propose approval of this application and delegate to the Director of Planning to condition accordingly.
Thank you, Councillor Kersey. Councillor Hartbury.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Yes, I mean, I'd like to second Councillor Kersey's proposal that we go for approval, because I'm hard-pressed to see where the harm is in the application. I'm afraid to say the harm, in my view, to the setting of the Grade 2 listed building was done in the 1970s. And also, I mean, I would add by creating a master bedroom and one or two other things. Now, I do understand that it's within the curtilage of a Grade 2 listed building, the 1970s extension. But I'm afraid to say our predecessors, in my view, undermined the standing of the Grade 2 listed building by allowing the extension. And the key thing, I think, about this Grade 2 listed building is actually the view from the front. That is undoubtedly what I'm sure Abbots Moreton residents want to see unchanged, because it keeps the historic nature of it. And so I'm happy to second the proposal, because I do not see there is harm in the extension.
Thank you, Councillor Hartbury. Have we any more comments, please? No? Councillor Middlebury.
Just to follow on from the last point made about there being no harm from the front view, actually, if you look at the rear view, I can't see there's any harm in the development itself. The windows from the core Grade 2 building don't look onto this particular part of the development. So it is in isolation, but it, I think, ensures the financial stability in the longer term of the core Grade 2 listed building.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any more comments? No. Carl, would you like to say?
Thank you. Just so we're clear, so we don't fall foul of our duties under section 66(1, just because you might not be able to see it from the public vantage point or it's an enclosed view, that in itself wouldn't meet the test in terms of our duties. There's plenty of appeal decisions where there's, regarding listed buildings, where there's no public view, but that in itself is not a reason to depart from that duty. So members are free to go the way the recommendation is going, but it's just to make that explicit point. Just because you can't see it from the highway or a public right-of-way doesn't absolve you of exercising the duty of 66(1. The second point is really, the motion is to approve subject to conditions. I can come up with millions of conditions, so can I have a bit of a steer on what sort of conditions you are wanting on this, given we have a detailed scheme before us?
Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Carl. I can ease your concern around the views from the front, because in my proposal for approval, I didn't mention anything about the front, so I can deal with that for you. And I would pass the imposing of conditions over to my well-qualified officers who are best placed to do that.
Sure, but are you concerned about materials, articulation, joinery details, window? It's very open-ended, I'm afraid. Sorry.
If you want me to condition the conditions, other than passing over them to the Director of Planning and Infrastructure, who I believe is perfectly suitable and qualified to do those, we can add in conjunction with the local ward member, with the conservation officer, whatever you want to do. But I'm pretty think that we're safe in the hands of the Director of Planning and Infrastructure.
Kieran?
Yeah, I mean, I think the key ones would relate to materials. There's window joinery details. There's some other things, and there could be, depending on the fabric, we'll only need to speak to the conservation officer, but about the method of construction and demolition, that sort of thing. So they would be captured, but like you say, we haven't got them before us, and I think we can take those away. Thank you.
Are there any further comments? Because we've had a proposal from Councillor Kersey, seconded by Councillor Hartbury, for approval of this application, contrary to the officer's recommendation. Heather, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So your voting members to delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Infrastructure to grant planning permission with an appropriate set of conditions attached. Are we happy with that proposal? Yeah. Okay. If we can move to the vote then, those in favour? Those against? That motion's carried 11-1, Chair.
Thank you very much, everybody. Now we're going to have a break of 10 minutes. There's some refreshments upstairs in the members' room.
Chair,
But make
Chair,
sure it's any... Sorry.
We need to do the listed buildings.
Sorry, do sit down. In my haste to get a piece of cake halfway through this meeting, I have forgotten to cover 9B, which is a listed building consent. And I'm presuming that there are no further comments from either the speakers or yourselves. It's for this particular listed building consent, which follows 9A. But we do need to take a vote on that. So over to you, Heather. Is that all right?
I think, Chair,
Are you happy with the same motion then? First of all, Councillor Kersey, are you happy with that? And Councillor Hardman?
Correct, Chairman.
Right, so they're both happy with that, so you're forward with that, thank you.
So members, you again voting for approval to delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Infrastructure to grant permission with an appropriate set of conditions attached. So those in favour, please. Those against? That motion's carried, Chair, at 11.
Thank you. So you've got 9 minutes now for your cake. That's right. Are we nearly here, ready?
We're still somebody short, I think.
I don't think so. Charles in the front. Okay, you take your seats, councillors. We haven't got some speakers in yet. Welcome back. We'll press on with item number 10, planning application 24, Bleak 02415, Laurels Avenue, Offenham. We had a site visit there this morning. We have 3 speakers, or one of 3. Julian Hill, Ms. Rebecca Pitt, and Mrs. Janet Beckett. Are you all 3 of you here? 2 of you are here. That's fine. Would you like to come in the front then? Thank you. Are you both going to speak? No, you are going to. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hill. That's fine. Thank you. I welcome Joan Desmond, who's going to outline this application for you. Joan.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, members. This application is a residential proposal for 23 dwellings, public open space, a SUD space and associated infrastructure. And just to update members, on the update sheet, it refers to some plans, amended plans that were received. They were mainly in relation to some boundary treatment and landscape changes, also relating to improving the BNG gain on the site. And a result of that, it's likely that further biodiversity conditions will need to be added to if members decide to approve the application. So this is a slide just showing the site in relation to the district. So you can see it's to the northeast of Evesham. This is the site location plans, the site edge red, and as members saw today, it's a site which is located to the rear of Laurels Avenue, and you've got Liso Road on the northern boundary. This is an aerial view of the site, so this is site here, an undeveloped area of land with some trees and shrub planting, and you'll see there's agricultural nursery development to the northeast, and you've got Laurels Avenue to the south of the site. This is the latest iteration of the layout plan, which shows the continuation of Laurels Avenue to serve access into the site with frontage development and with the area of attenuation and open space in this central northern part of the site. This is just the access plan, just showing how the visibility displays have been provided, and members will see it's an adopted road to this point, and then it continues as a private drive serving most of the development on that eastern side of the site. This is the latest landscape strategy, so the main changes, as I say, are related to landscaping and biodiversity net gain. So there is a mature hedgerow planted along Liso Road. There's an orchard area now here and wildflower planting. You've got your 2 informal play spaces here, sorry, 1 formal, 1 informal play space. You've got additional of some tree planting, some to the front of the gardens of the property, some at the rear. And you've got additional, this darker black is the additional shrub planting along the northern and eastern boundary and also at the frontage to the site. This is a slide showing typical sort of street scenes of the development. So you've got a more contemporary design approach to the proposal, a mix of materials. You've got a different house types, so you've got some semis, you've got a terrace, and here you've got the bungalows, which will be siding on to Liso Road. And these are some photographs of the site. So this is taken from within the site. We're looking back towards Laurels Avenue, and this is sort of a wider view angle with Laurels Avenue to the left. So in terms of the application, the site is an allocated housing site under policy SWDP 59 for approximately 19 dwellings. So given this context, the proposal is acceptable in principle. So whilst the proposal to provide 23 dwellings is in excess of the indicative number stated in the local plan, the proposed scheme accords with the objectives of the design brief and the scheme has been amended following extensive discussions with various consultees, including Urban Design, the Natural Heritage team, and is considered to be of a good design. The level of development proposed raises no significant concerns in terms of landscape, visual impact and effects on biodiversity. And in respect of drainage, conditions will ensure that a suitable drainage scheme is implemented that discharges surface water in accordance with the drainage hierarchy and prioritises infiltration suds above the Fowles sewer. In addition to this, just to let members know, there has been a late representation from the lead local flood authority, and some of the conditions that were suggested in the schedule are to be recommended to change. So there were a replacement of condition 13, and there'll be slight amendments recommended to conditions 6 and 7. So in respect of all, the submissions have shown that the proposal would be in accordance with the development plan, or that conditions can be imposed to ensure the development complies with the South Worcestershire Development Plan policies. In such circumstances, paragraph 14 of the MPPF state that permission should be granted without delay. The application is thus recommended for approval as set out in the schedule, with the recommended changes to the drainage conditions and the addition of any required biodiversity conditions. That ends the presentation. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Julian Hill, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Dear Chair, members of the committee, I'm pleased to present to you today the proposed housing scheme for the site allocated within the South Worcestershire Development Plan Review. This scheme has been brought forward by Wychavon District Council with a clear and ambitious brief to deliver an exemplar development that not only provides much needed homes, but also sets a high benchmark for quality and sustainability. At the heart of this proposal is the delivery of 23 homes that responds directly to local need. The scheme has been carefully designed to include a strong proportion of rental sector housing with a mix of property sizes and types that reflect the demand identified in the area. In doing so, it will help provide secure, affordable homes for a wide range of residents, from young families to older people wishing to remain in their community. The journey to this point has been an inclusive and collaborative one. From the outset, the applicant has worked closely with the Planning Authority's urban design officers to ensure the scheme is consistent with the Council's emerging design code. That process has shaped both the building design and the landscape framework, ensuring that what is proposed is not just functional, but distinctive, attractive and rooted in the character of its surroundings. Sustainability is also central to the proposal. The development incorporates renewable energy measures and has been guided by principles of environmental responsibility from the ground up. In practice, that means energy efficient buildings, thoughtfully designed public spaces, and green infrastructure that promotes biodiversity as well as well-being for future residents. Taken together, this scheme directly addresses one of Wychavon District Council's key priorities to deliver affordable, well-designed and sustainable communities. It provides housing where it's most needed, it showcases best practice in design, and it demonstrates a commitment to long-term environmental stewardship. In conclusion, this is more than just a housing development. It's an opportunity to set a standard to demonstrate what can be achieved when planning policy, design expertise and community needs align. I recommend this scheme to you as one that delivers on both the letter of the spirit of the Council's vision for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hill. We have no ward member for this area, as you know. So I'll ask the committee, have any questions? Councillor Kersey.
Chairman, thank you. Yes, can I ask a question, please, to Joe Bound as our Urban Design Officer? In the report as it stands at the moment, it still states that you hope to see additional improvements in respect of design. Can you confirm that those additional improvements that you wanted to see have been contained in the reiteration that's before us today?
Yes, Councillor Kersey. I believe that we've reached a point where we've had amended plans and that we are satisfied with what they've brought forward. There were issues around the landscape and trying to get some more trees into the street scene and things like that. Obviously, you've been coordinating with our ecology members as well in terms of going more towards an orchard and the wildflower and having some further enhancements through that. So it was really a concentration around the sort of the landscape design is what we were focusing on. I hope that answers your question. Okay, thanks.
Councillor Middleborough.
Thank you. I'd like to ask a question to the appropriate people or person. Who is going to manage those green spaces that you've just been talking about? Have you been in any discussions with the parish council about the management of those spaces if it's not the parish council itself?
The scheme, if approved, will be a joint venture between Wychavon and Rooftop Housing. So Rooftop Housing will be responsible for managing all of those areas.
Thank you. Councillor Morris.
I'm picking up on a query from Offenham Parish Council about the fact that the developments they've had to date have been fewer than 50 dwellings. So they have concerns about the send provision. And I appreciate that this is also below 50 dwellings. Is there anything we can do about that as a committee for them?
No, I have looked at that, but it is something in terms of the methodology. But they do look at all approved schemes and the pupil yield. But in terms of that quantum triggering the requirement for contribution, it is the 50 that I understand for that contribution requirement.
Thank you. Councillor Hardman.
Hopefully this will be a quick one. Could you explain the logic to me of only partially adopting the road system within the site? You indicated you were going to basically, off the top of my head, adopt the first 40 yards and then no further.
It's literally up to the end of the statutory size turning head that forms the junction in the centre of the scheme. So that's why that ends there, because we wouldn't want it to go further than it would normally be allowed in terms of distance.
Does that answer your question?
I don't think it does. I don't think it does, Chairman, with all respect.
Well, clearly the adoptable element is the bit that the Highways Authority will take on, and that turning head there will meet the requisite specifications, sizes, distances. The unadopted bit, by its very nature, doesn't have to come up to those standards, basically. And what often you'll find there is different surfacing materials that the Highways Authority don't like. There might be different carriageway widths and so on and so forth. So the adoptable bit is a bit that comes up to the technical standards that the highways work to, and the unadopted bits don't have to come up to that. Obviously, they have to be accessible and be safe and so forth, but things like surfacing and some of the provisions within them don't have to come up to those same standards. They're also, of course, that would be then outside of highways upkeep as well, so they'd be upkept privately.
Thank you. Councillor Tucker.
Thank you. My question is to Joan. You mentioned that there'd been a late consideration or a late representation from the lead local flood authority. I notice it's not, and no reference to that in the updates. So perhaps you could give us a little bit more information?
Yes, it just came late yesterday, so apologies I wasn't able to get it on time to the update sheet. But in response to a further technical note, which was looking again more at the drainage strategy, the lead local flood authority have suggested some amendments to the drainage conditions to just make sure that an appropriate sustainable drainage scheme is what we approve. So there's 3 conditions. As I say, 13 is to be changed, requiring them to do more detailed sort of infiltration tests And the other two are again about that detailed sort of drainage strategy to make sure that it's appropriate and something that we are likely to approve. So that's following some further discussions that they had with the local flood authority.
Thank you. Councillor Kersey.
Chairman, thank you. Following on from Councillor Hardman's question, I wonder if this could be the first live example of our design code versus the Worcestershire County Council streetscape. Are we saying that the part that isn't going to be adopted is because it doesn't comply with the County Council and streetscape?
No, this is about the adoptability of the highway, if I'm understanding the question right, not in terms of urban design principles. This is purely about the technical specifications of the adopted highway element compared to the unadopted highway element.
Yeah, I think that's really sort of what I'm saying is is it because we've gone further with our in line with our design code and therefore they won't adopt because of their streetscape?
Yeah, I'd like to answer that. Yeah, what it is that it gives more flexibility when it becomes out of the adoption side of things. It gives you more flexibility in a design way. So it's not that it's not compliant, it's just there's more flexibility there. And you will see a lot of developments, particularly new developments, where to minimise and give it more softer feel, the street, you see where you can actually go from an adopted to an unadopted situation. So you will get, sometimes you'll get shorter private drives and they've got much better quality materials and surface materials because it is more in the private domain. So, this is a balance that you have to work within, the Highways Authority's requirements. So for me, this isn't a shortfall. This is some way of providing opportunity to make more attractive spaces within the street scene.
Sorry, Chairman, if I may. And absolutely, Joe, I completely agree with you. But I think it's the balance that we're in at the moment, because I've had an assurance from Worcestershire County Council that they won't progress with their streetscape until they've liaised with us with regards to Wychavon's design code. So I wonder if this is an example of where we are looking to achieve higher standards, exactly as you describe, but that doesn't fit in their streetscape, which is why it can't be adopted. So whether there's an opportunity there to explore that, but fundamentally we're saying that it's not adopted. Absolutely, I agree. It's because we're looking for more here than we would otherwise be able to do with an adopted road. But are we saying that if there was more provision within their streetscape, then we could have the more higher quality areas adopted as well, potentially?
I think that's up for further discussion with the Highways County Council. We have had earlier discussions this year with them and we would like to progress that further.
Councillor Clapworthy.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure who I'm asking this question to, so you have a little bun fight between you. Adopted and unadopted roads, I'm quite sure I know the difference. But who will be responsible for the unadopted parts?
As per the maintenance of the green space, it'll be rooftop that will be looking after those.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions at all? Councillor Della.
Sorry, just a quick question. We are talking about private rent properties, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And are we putting restrictions on who can rent them, or are they affordable to all residents?
Yeah, there aren't any restrictions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? No? Well, I'll open it then to debate. Would anybody like to bring some points? Councillor Middlebrough.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm sort of on a one-track mission this afternoon. In terms of the green space, I would like to see if this is going to move forward, a condition put in similar to the one that we did on a previous application in relation to the management of the green space and asking that the parish council are given an opportunity to actually have long-term management of that space.
Okay. Councillor Kersey.
Chairman, thank you. This scheme I remember this being in play for some considerable time ago. Probably Jeanette can correct me, but certainly I remember this being in place for at least the last 3 years. And I think we at Wychavon are to be congratulated on it, because what we've done from the very outset, we were very clear that we were going to ensure that when this came forward, it came forward with the exemplar design, and it was very much in keeping with the design code. And the reason why this hasn't come forward before is because we've completely stuck with that all the way through. So I think we're to be congratulated for the fact that we've stuck with what we said we would do, and that is very much what's in front of us today. So I would propose approval in line with the officer recommendation, but with it's not even a condition. I would ask really our officers to use this as whether it's a test case or whatever it may be, for us to seek to see if more, to work with Worcestershire County Council to see if more could be approved to be adopted as far as the roads are concerned than would otherwise be adopted. And I think this will be a good vehicle, excuse the expression, to use to test our design code and how far they're prepared to go with their streetscape. I appreciate that some of it might come into legal parameters as to what they will adopt and what they won't adopt, but I would like for us to use this as a perfect example to see what they will do with it.
Thank you, Councillor Kersey. Can I bring in Andrew?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Kersey, I might have something that will be of some use to you on this one. Worcestershire County Council don't like permeable paving. They will not adopt a highway with permeable paving. So we've been, I mean, Charles are like this. I mean, we've tried and tried and tried to get Worcestershire County Council to look at other forms of drainage rather than just trap gullies and sewers. And at the moment, their highways department aren't particularly willing to move that way. So in some respect, by only having that spine road as short as it is, we've now got the opportunity to go for better sustainable drainage methods. So in this instance, it may well be that all those unadopted private areas will actually become better drained in terms of sustainability than the traditional methods.
Yeah. Councillor Kersey.
Chairman, if I may, thank you. Thank you, Andrew. And I think that really emphasises the point for us to try and really push the envelope here to say that what they're currently not adopting and what they don't currently like, it means that you don't get as high quality and you don't get as much drainage and all that sort of thing. So I think thank you, Andrew, for that point, because I think that's an even further reason, because obviously in the whole round we need to look at drainage, across the board. So if we can demonstrate that we can actually achieve better drainage systems by them then adopting those systems, then we'll be much better. Because obviously there's a lot of schemes that if the road can't be adopted, then they will only go as far as that road. So I think very much for us to bring that point into play when we discuss with Worcestershire County Council.
Thank you. Can I have any further comments? Councillor Tucker.
Thank you. Well, as you might imagine, I was going to address the question of drainage, and I'm interested to hear from Andrew that the change in the way in which the highways are approached does give that opportunity to get a more sustainable approach to the surface water drainage. When I saw the plan, which was shown there, my immediate concern was it's another bomb crater, and I have concerns about that, but I can hear people saying, well, we've had new advice from the LLFA, which may make it possible to alter that. But just to make it clear about the concerns that I would have, the standard bomb crater that you get will have a gradient of side gradients of 1 in 3. Now, there is an issue there about safety. This is right in the middle of a new development with a lot of children around, and having something like that, even if you've got fences around it, is a concern about safety. And anything that can be done to reduce the gradients, get more gradual sides to the surface water lagoon that is going to be there, and of course to have planting within it, which will enhance the biodiversity elements and therefore improve our BNG calculations. And of course, it becomes much more of an exemplar development if we are able to demonstrate that it does comply properly with our SWDP 29. So thank you, Chairman.
Yes, I gather conditions to finalise everything, so that'll come up again, I think. Councillor Teller?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I know this has been a journey for our officers to get to this point, and and I think that is right, because as Councillor Kersey said, I think it's important that as a council we hold ourselves to a higher standard. We hold ourselves to having the most exemplar site possible. We can't sit here and criticise developers' designs and not live up to that ourselves. One of the things that really stands out to me on this is, and one of the reasons I asked the question, is the fact that we've got private rented properties on this site. Wychavon only has 13% of all their properties being private rented. So therefore, seeing an uplift in that, it can only help. We often quote the housing register of 2,500, 29, whatever it is now. But we often forget a lot of that is band 4 and 5 who aren't eligible for a lot of who aren't eligible for the affordable housing. So what they need is private rent to get somewhere to live, and we are delivering that. So I'm delighted to second Councillor Kersey's motion.
Thank you, Councillor Teller. Any other comments before we go to vote on this? No? Well, Councillor Middleburgh.
Just to ask if my comment about management arrangements is appropriate to be a condition.
Darren?
I think well, technically it could be. In this case, there's a lot of the open spaces sort of spread out throughout the site, and the area of suds takes up a large proportion of it. So in reality, I wouldn't think it's a realistic prospect that a parish council would take this on. So and in the model of rooftop, in terms of managing the sites, they would normally manage and maintain the whole of the site and the relevant elements. So I think from this aspect, I'd suggest that it's probably not the most appropriate, even though that's normally a acceptable mechanism. And on the other side, the difference was that there was quite large areas of open space, even though it had some suds features within. It was a much more straightforward matter.
Thank you. And again?
If I can just come back on that. I mean, say we're talking about where we are today with rooftop, but what we know from time to time, the management arrangements change between companies and there's absorption. I would just like to see some protection for the local community of the open space. And if you could build something in relation to that to stop it being wholeheartedly transferred from time to people who we know nothing about, if that comes about.
Yeah, I mean, it's very. I fully understand the point, and it's something which I'm not sure how we would secure it, because ultimately a management company is an acceptable planning method to manage the site. So I think if there was a prospect of the parish council taking these spaces on, I think that's something that could be explored, but they may still not take it on, so we still need the management company option anyway. And I think in this case, there's just technical reasons. I mean, they'd essentially, to make it worthwhile in terms of space, they'd have to adopt the SUDS probably as well, or a management of that, and that would probably be prohibitive. So that's why in this case it's different to the previous ones. But what we will do, we've obviously had that discussion earlier about the application, and I think it's something we will take forward as officers to explore before these come to committee, and we will try and recommend where there is an appropriate site where we can include that clause within the section 106.
Thank you. No more comments? We have a proposal from Councillor Kersey and seconded by Councillor Della. Heather, thank you.
So, members, you're voting for approval in line with the officer recommendation, but incorporating the changes mentioned by the officer in their presentation relating to drainage and biodiversity. And then separately, to note to work with Worcestershire County Council and use this application as an example to see what they are prepared to do with regard to the adoption of where there are other methods of construction of roads over and above the normal tarmac and gullies. Are we, the proposer and seconder, happy with that? In that case, I'll move to the vote then. Those in favour, please. That's unanimous, Chair.
Very much, and thank you for speaking this afternoon. Thank you. You're welcome to stay if you want to. We'll just hang on a minute before we go on to item 11. And thank you for your input, Chair. Right, moving on to item 11, planning application 23 oblique 01358, formerly the Royal British Legion at Mildridge Way at Hartbury. And this was demolition of existing buildings and erection of 12 dwellings with access. And we have Councillor Hancocks and Mr. Jeremy Horton and Ms. Kelsey Millwood, is that right? Have we got Councillor Hancocks? Hartbury? No? Do you want to? No? Okay. We haven't. Thank you. Right. And the planning officer is Adam White. So, Adam, could you outline this application, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the application relates to the former Royal British Legion Social Club. So this is accessed off Millridge Way in Hartbury. So this site is currently owned by the council. So the site comprises the existing access that serves as the rear of a number of dwelling houses in Woodbury Close and the former social club. So the building is currently in a very poor state of repair. So the site is bounded by the south and west by agricultural land and to the north and south by residential properties. So the site is not subject to any formal or informal landscape designation, doesn't contain any designated heritage assets. It's within flood zone 1 and therefore a low risk of flooding. The site also lies within the defined settlement boundary for Hartbury, which is a Category 1 village. That shows you the site in context there. So the proposal is for the demolition of the existing building and the erection of 12 dwellings with access, open space, parking, landscaping and associated works. So access would be obtained from the existing access of Millridge Way, which in turn is accessed off Worsley Court Road. So improvements are proposed to the Millridge Way. So it's proposed all the dwellings would be affordable and they'd be comprised of 9 social rented and free shared ownership homes. That shows you the appearance of the houses. This is a view from the site access from Millridge Way. This is a view along the existing road to the social club. Again, looking back down the access road the other way. That shows the existing building. You can see there that it's in a really poor state of repair. And again, showing the adjacent houses next door to the site. And this is the access from Worsley Court Road. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Mr. Jeremy Horton, you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Members of the committee, my name is Jeremy Horton and I'm the planning consultant appointed by the applicant.
The application concerns a former Royal British Legion site on Millridge Way in Hartbury, which has been vacant since 2013 and is now in a state of disrepair. The proposal seeks to replace a redundant building with high-quality homes on brownfield land. The proposal seeks approval for the demolition of the existing building and the erection of 12 new dwellings, all of which will be affordable with access, open space, parking, landscaping and associated works. The tenure mix will be affordable, including some shared ownership, directly responding to the most acute housing need across Wychavon. Wychavon District Council's housing team has not raised any objections to the proposal. Importantly, by redeveloping a site that has long been associated with the service and of the armed forces community, the proposal offers a fitting legacy, including the provision of secure, affordable homes for local people. It allows a place once dedicated to supporting those who serve the country to continue serving the wider community in a new and equally valuable way. The site is sustainably located within the defined boundary of Hartbury, a Category 1 village. The site is not constrained by heritage designations and lies within Flood Zone 1. The proposal is consistent with the policies of the South Worcestershire Development Plan as a whole. The homes adopt a contemporary style that is sensitive to the local context with a clear commitment to landscaping, tree planting and the retention of hedgerows to protect visual character and biodiversity. The layout has been carefully planned to safeguard residential amenity while providing new open space and natural surveillance. Highways and access has been thoroughly assessed. Worcestershire County Council has confirmed that the upgraded access and additional footway provision represents an improvement on the existing arrangements. Crucially, the transport assessment demonstrates that the development will generate fewer trips than the former social club use, amounting to a net benefit for road safety and traffic management. Environmental considerations have been addressed. Ecological surveys have informed mitigation and enhancement measures, ensuring that biodiversity on the site will be protected. The drainage strategy will be secured via a condition, ensuring that surface water is properly managed. The proposal will deliver significant social benefits by contributing to affordable housing land supply at a time when the council can only demonstrate a supply of 1.1 years. It will support economic growth during the construction and through local spending in the community, and it utilises brownfield land. The planning balance is clear. The benefits of the proposal substantially outweigh any limited and manageable harms. For these reasons, we respectfully urge the committee to support the officer recommendation and grant approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Houghton. I get just make sure we haven't got Councillor Hancock's here. No. The ward member is Councillor Hartley, who's not here this afternoon, so I will ask the committee if you have any questions for speakers. Councillor Kersey.
Chairman, thank you. I'm not sure whether this question is to Adam or to the applicant, or it would be good to hear from them both. Can you direct me, please, to where it states in the conditions that this is going to be priority, because this scheme was originally designed to be purely for housing for the armed forces and veterans and their families? And I hear what you're saying, that it obviously was the Royal British Legion Club, but I can't. Can you direct me to where we're stating that that has to be the case, please?
Yeah, it's not in the report. Sorry, this was only raised to myself quite late in the day, so apologies. But it's set out in the late papers. So it's actually a condition of sale. But also we'd seek to include this in the 106 as well. So then there would be written in that there would be a priority for armed service as well.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Kersey.
Sorry, Chairman, thank you. Could I just go back to the applicant and ask him what his understanding of the provision for the housing for veterans is, please?
My understanding was that it was a condition of the sale, and so it would be managed through legal agreements. That was my understanding. It wasn't part of the planning application in a direct sense.
Thank you. Are there any further... Paul, are you asking a question there? Any further questions to the speakers? No? And I'll thank you very much for speaking. Would you like to return to your seat then, if there's no more questions for you? Thank you. And I'll open it up to general debate. Councillor Morris, followed by Councillor Middleborough. Sorry, was that a question? You can still ask a question then.
Thank you. I just feel that because Hartbury aren't here, maybe we should look at page 129, because they did raise a number of concerns, and I just, apologies if I've missed them in the report. If you could just look at those, Adam, and just give us a bit of feedback on whether those concerns have been adequately responded to. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just running through some of the parish concerns. Inadequate vehicle access, especially for emergency and larger service vehicles. Highways have looked at this. There's improvements to the access driveway. There's going to be a footpath along the back as well, and they're happy that it can be accessed by emergency vehicles and refuse vehicles. In terms of the highway impact, it's got existing, actually the net trips to and from would actually be less than what the existing lawful use is, so there's probably a lesser impact on the highway, and the visibility displays are considered to be fine at both the access to Millridge Ray and also the main junction as well. Site is not suitable for the proposed density. I think officers are satisfied in terms of the number of units on site they fit on. We're happy with the design. It seems an appropriate response to the context of the site. It's quite a contemporary design, but I think design-wise, I think officers are happy that it's good quality design. So footpath access from Woodbury Close to Millridge Way would be blocked. That's not my understanding. There's a connection point through shown to the plans, which would, I think there's an existing access there anyway, which would connect through to Woodbury Close. So it says no low carbon or renewable energy details. We can secure that for a condition as a standard condition for 10%. Car charging points, that's a building regulations matter, so that would be picked up by them. It says no bike sheds or no bin storage. There is bin storage, I can see in the corner of the site next to the flats. In terms of bikes, you'd probably anticipate they'd be either in the shed in the back garden, so I don't think that's necessarily an issue.
Thank you. Councillor Middleworth?
Are we on to the debate now?
Why have you got? We are on to the debate. If I've forgotten to hear a question from you.
Oh right. Well, I'm
You're on debate. Have we finished? We finished the questions. We're on to debate now. So over to you.
Okay. Well, thank you. I mean, so this afternoon, I was going to say I'm a substitute. I'm almost a surrogate for Councillor Adams here today, and Councillor Adams has actually followed this through from its gestation many years ago, and the difficulties that have gone through. But he's followed it through, and I know he's very disappointed not to be here this afternoon, but he has actually, first of all, given us a good flavour and clarified a position which is in the update notes, which have been mentioned about the sale of the contract, which has that armed forces provisions in it, and you've all got that update there. And I think Councillor Adams would say this is a good quality development, which actually reflects the good quality development that was built in Norton. And there is a bit of similarity there between the final product of the houses. So if anybody actually wants to see what this is going to look like, they could go to Norton by one of the roundabouts just before you get to the barracks, and you will see a distinct quality change between the houses which have been put for families of armed forces and veterans there, and perhaps some of the lesser quality houses in the near vicinity. So I think on that basis, I would like to propose the officers' recommendations this afternoon.
Thank you, Councillor Middleworth. Councillor, shall we have Councillor Sims and Councillor Kersey?
Chairman, I did put my hand up quite a while ago.
Fold then. So can we have your comments first then?
Thank you, Chairman. Just because it follows on from Councillor Middleworth's comments, really, not to jump a queue. As Councillor Middleworth mentioned about the homes at Norton, which Rob and I visit quite often, and ex-servicemen are very happily living there and proud of where they are. And what makes it particularly poignant for them is that the name of that close where they live relates to the Worcestershire Regiment and their past association with places where they served. So a precedent has been set, and I would like to ask that if this were to be approved, at Norton, the close is called St Helena, which is where the regiment guarded Napoleon after his defeat at Waterloo in 1815. And this was instigated by Councillor Rob Adams, who of course is connected with our Armed Forces Covenant, and Sir Peter Luff, and they were instrumental in creating that. And I'm sure they would also support the suggestion of whether our street naming team could look at a similar condition being imposed, and a 106 for with the ex-serviceman, that this close or drive or whatever you like to call it could be named accordingly. Thank you. And at that basis, I'd like to second the proposal.
Certainly talk to the name, street name people, in which it's not a planning thing, that isn't, but another department. Councillor Sims, followed by Councillor Kersey.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to congratulate the Council on bringing this brownfield site forward, and hopefully that we can bring these sites sooner rather than taking 10, 12 years. So that's all I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kersey.
Chairman, thank you. To Councillor Robinson's point about the street naming, absolutely, this needs to be in keeping with its heritage of being the Royal British Legion building. And the street naming does actually come to me as the portfolio holder for planning. So, and I, as you know, I will absolutely make sure that it is the most suitable name for that. I completely agree with everything that Councillor Middleburgh and Councillor Robinson have said. Although I am concerned, go back to Councillor Sims's point actually, this, similar to the previous application that we had, this scheme has actually been on the Capital Projects Board since its inception. And constantly I've kept changing the dates on my papers to know when's it going to come to planning, when's it going to come to planning. So I'm very pleased to see it here eventually at planning today. But I am concerned, thank you Adam for pointing me in the direction of the update, and I understand that this is going to be a condition of the sale and will then be a condition, but I'm not confident with prioritising, because with all due respect, the applicant speaking on behalf of Rooftop, I'm not entirely sure of his understanding of the fact that this is deemed to be, and this was always designed to be, where possible, 100% for those with armed forces connection. So I would like to, obviously I will go along with Councillor Middleburgh and Councillor Robinson's proposal, but I would like to add to that a conversation obviously needs to be had separately to make sure that what's within the legal agreement of the sale that we're completely happy with, but also with regards to the condition within the planning application, I would like that to be in conjunction with Councillor Adams to set what prioritising looks like for the cascade. Heather's shaking her head at me. The cascade effect, because fundamentally what I'm concerned about, and hopefully Heather can put me right as to what is the best way to do this, but I'm concerned that sometimes prioritising can be a token gesture. If you go out if somebody can justify anything and say, we went out to the armed forces community, there was nobody that needed it. There we go, book shut, and then you haven't got anybody with an armed forces connection. So that's what I want to make sure can't happen, and that I want this to be a scheme that has been it fulfills exactly what the need was originally generated for.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kersey. Councillor Middleburgh.
Can I just say, not pretending to be Councillor Adams, but passing the message on, I'm absolutely sure he would agree with that, and that will go with his experience in Norton with the letting of those houses. And indeed, when they were put forward, the parish council said, oh, nobody will come forward for these houses, but several hundred people did come forward, and they've all been occupied ever since appropriately.
It's worth mentioning that actually there was up to quite recently there was an RAF base, which the Hartbury Trading Estate was RAF, and that there's still an RAF flag in Elmley Lovett Church, which is down the road, which they used to have a service every year. So it was quite a prominent RAF base. That's up by the side. Heather?
If I can just offer a bit of advice for members to consider, please. I was going to suggest, and I'll just read it out, that actually, and I'll explain why after I've said it, that we go along with the recommendation, as members have stated that they're happy to do so, so to delegate authority to the Director of Planning and Infrastructure to grant planning permission subject to the completion of the Section 106 legal agreement to secure the obligations, but also noting that first priority should be given to armed forces personnel, and then obviously the conditions listed, and then allowing for any subsequent amendments. The reason I'm proposing that is it's very important that the Section 106 agreement shouldn't actually conflict with the land transfer, which we understand has got the armed forces provision in, and that so because the 106 agreement would normally just go for the local connection, so we need to put that in. Homes England, though, do recognise that armed forces personnel do have in certain instances, particularly where there's any grant funding, priority as well. But what we shouldn't do is fetter the housing association so that when they come to let those properties, we say it can only be armed forces, because otherwise you take the risk then, and we can put a period of time in that they have to endeavour to do it to. But you fetter their discretion and you leave those units then vacant with nobody in. And at the end of the day, the important thing is that they're utilised for those in need of affordable housing, with the armed forces recognised first. You don't want to just sterilise them. And you can always come back that then when somebody perhaps who hasn't got that armed forces connection, when they leave, you get to have another go with an armed forces. So if that would work for members, that would be what I would suggest is the motion that you vote on, as provided that's okay.
Yes, thank you, Heather, and thank you, Chairman, for letting me come back. It's very much so that whatever the wording is within the Section 106, it isn't that it's a token thing and then somebody can say, I've done that. So I'd like it to be that it's priority, but also that there's a level of promotion that has to go within there, because we all know that we've seen situations where, for example, a place is supposed to be for social rent, and then, or let's say shared ownership, and then a housing association say, oh no, we couldn't do shared ownership, so now we need to revert it to social rent. So what I want to do is to take away that grey area, so that absolutely, as you say, we can't have it that units would then be unoccupied, but yes, let's put the timescales in, but so that they're reasonable timescales, and it means that they have to, it means that they absolutely would want to promote it, because if it's for a long enough time period, then they would want to make sure that they've got people in there.
Thank you. Are you happy, Councillor Middleborough and Councillor Robinson, for that? Well, that's excellent. Whatever you said was excellent. Perhaps you can say it again, but if there's no more comments, we'll go to vote. So we've got a proposer and seconder. Heather, back to you again.
So as the proposer and seconder are absolutely fine with that wording that I read out. Would anybody like me to read it again? No, we're fine. So if we can move to the vote then, please. Those in favour? That's unanimous, Chair.
Indeed, and thank you for speaking this afternoon. We go to the last item. My goodness me, it's only 4 o'clock. Something is definitely wrong today. Just wait for Councillor Della to go and sit in a bad seat. This is planning application. They're all important, so don't keep concentrating. Don't start chatting. Keep concentrating. Item 12. Planning application 25/01348. This is a PIP, permission in principle, at land at Kidderminster Road, Cutnell Green, which you've been to, if you were on the site visit before. And we have a speaker, Councillor Barry Ordis, Chairman of Elmbridge Parish Council. If you'd like to come up to the front, Barry, thank you. It's over there, so you're somewhere there. Okay. Thank you very much. Planning Officer again is Adam White. So, Adam, would you like to go through this, please?
Thank you, Chair. So the site is located on the southern edge of Cutnell Green, so Category 3 village. Site is currently a vacant parcel of land which is bounded by existing residential development to the north and east and open fields to the south and west. So site's within a green belt outside of any recognised settlement boundary. So site's currently accessed off an existing driveway off the A442, which also serves several adjacent properties. Shows you the site there again. So the application seeks permission in principle for the erection of between 2 and 4 dwellings. It's understood that these are proposed to be open market dwellings. So the permission in principle consent route has 2 stages. The first stage establishes whether a site is suitable in principle. Second stage is when the detailed development proposals are assessed. So the scope of this first stage is limited to location, land use and amount of development. So issues relevant to these in principle matters should be considered at this stage. Other matters should be considered at the technical details consent stage. So in terms of the site's history, members may recall granting outline permission on this site for up to 6 affordable dwellings. So that permission is still extant, although no reserve matters have since been submitted to date. So that just shows you the site there edged in red. That's access to the site. You can just views looking over the site. Again, from the site access. That's shown in the context of existing housing in the area. Again, looking out towards the open countryside. That's the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ordis, you've got 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm here representing Elmbridge Parish Council. I will be brief and to the point. Part of the community of Cutnell Green lies within the boundaries of Elmbridge Parish Council. I am here to carry out the wishes of the parish councillors to object to this application change. A Worcestershire orchard on Greenbelt, trashed, left, then planning sought for up to 6 affordable housing on so-called vacant amenity land. Application approved despite strong objections on the basis that the rules allow affordable housing to be built on Greenbelt. We now move forward to change the application up to 4 open market value housing. Greenbelt exceptions. The recommendation is to approve on the basis that the site is limited infill. We believe it is not infill. It is a parcel of amenity land behind a row of existing houses in a corner of an agricultural pasture field. Careful planning by the applicant to flout the planning process and make a mockery of the system, especially as this is Greenbelt. Locational sustainability. Cutnell Green has expanded over the years and has an excellent community spirit with a recreation ground, post office, cafe, public house and restaurant. However, affordable housing is minimal at Oak Tree Drive, Elmley Close and the Sherritts, and we believe there's 12 affordable housing. Whilst Elmbridge Parish Council appreciates the rules that this committee has to follow when the recommendation is for approval, we wish that you take on board our comments today to fully discuss. However, Elmbridge Parish Council objects to this application strongly, and if building is to take place, it should be for the original application of affordable housing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ordis. The board member is Councillor Della. Rick, have you got any questions to ask anybody? Thank you. I'll open it to committee. Have any questions for Councillor Ordis or the case officer? Councillor Kersey, followed by Councillor Morris.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm going to make an unusual statement, and that I'd like to put on record that there are an inordinate amount of questions that I would like to ask the applicant if they were here, but they're not here to answer my questions, so I will assume the answers.
I think that's very clear and short. Thank you. Councillor Morris?
It's really a point of legal clarification or definition, I suppose. Is there any difference between infill and limited infill? Could you sort of explain that?
Adam?
I guess, taking a step back, looking at the original application, so one of the exceptions was for the provision of affordable housing where there's a demonstrated local need. Another separate provision is where it's deemed infilling within the green belt. That's a judgment call. We've taken a view because it's quite an enclosed site, surrounded on two sides by existing development, that it's infill. Members might take a different view. So that's the subtle difference. I mean, the original one relied on the fact that it was affordable housing. This way is because the officer view is it's infilling in the green belt, so there's no in principle green belt issue, if that makes sense.
And this is completely separate. When the existing application is still, the existing permission is still live, yeah, so by default, does that mean you can have more than one application on the same site?
Yes, they could apply for all sorts of development on their site. Yeah, it doesn't necessarily matter.
Question to Councillor Ordis.
Fine.
I don't want to sound too controversial, but the thought that comes into my head is that the developer's gaming the system. Would you think that's an unreasonable description?
Yes, I think it is abysmal what the applicant is doing, actually. You know, going for affordable housing and then making the change. I think it is despicable, and I think it is. Well, we all think that it is flouting the planning rules.
Thank you.
You know, it's putting you as the committee in a very difficult situation. You know, I would go along and say it's making the planning committee look very foolish, and the planners look foolish.
Well, it hasn't yet, anyway. It's amazing. Councillor Sims.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask the officers, so should this application be refused, is there a fallback to the original 6 affordable units?
Yes, so if this was refused, the permission for the affordables is still extant, so that could be implemented, yeah.
Councillor Clapworthy.
Thank you, Chairman. One for the officers, please. At the beginning, it was saying that it's an application for a minimum of 2, maximum of 4 dwellings. If it was 2 dwellings, is it basically that piece of land cut in half and 2 dwellings? And if it's 4, is it cut into 4? I mean, what is the size of each property potentially going to be?
I mean, that would be a matter for the technical details stage. So at the moment, you'd be, if you were minded to permit it, it would be the assumption there'd be between 2 or 4 dwellings. At this stage, you wouldn't be determining any sort of layout, size of plots. That would come further down the line.
Do you want to have a word? Thank you.
I was just all I was going to say is that the principle of up to 6 dwellings has been established from the previous application. So I think it would be difficult on in terms of quantum to raise concern on that point, because there's an extant permission that allows up to 6, so it's demonstrated that in principle that number is okay, but obviously there's other considerations that are around, but we won't know the detail till the technical detail consent came forward if the PIP was approved.
Councillor Ali.
Remember, I supported this when it was for affordable housing. Could the officers please clarify whether the affordable housing is required because it's in Greenbelt?
Could you clarify that, Adam? Thank you.
Not because it's in Greenbelt, because it's in a designated rural area. There will have to be a 20% or the financial contribution equivalent to 20% of the number of affordable number of dwellings that are eventually provided on site if permission was granted. So it would be an off-site contribution only, and it would be a lot less than what was originally granted.
Yeah, but if it's only 2 houses, they wouldn't need to make a contribution, would they?
Yes, they've still have to be 20% of the value of the 2. There's a calculation of how they do that. I don't know what that is, but there would be a financial contribution equivalent to 20%.
Thank you very much. Any further questions to either the speakers? Either speakers? No. Thank you, Councillor Aldis. You'd like to go back to your seat. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll ask Rick, Councillor Della, to address the committee. Thank you, Rick.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think it's quite ironic this is a planning in principle, because there's certainly no principle when it comes to this. I think this is shameful. I'm tired. There's a reason. There is a reason residents do not engage with the planning process. It's because things like this happen. I didn't overly agree with the initial agreement, but you accept it because there is affordable housing, and Cottage Green needs affordable housing. There is no doubt about that. So it's granted that on that basis. And then what, in a matter of weeks, comes back, oh, actually, we don't want to do that. We want market value. And why is that? Why is that? There's one reason, and the one reason only. It's because it's all about profit. It's a shame the planning agent isn't here, because he sat in that chair and he made this big deal. Oh, I'm doing this for the people. I'm doing this. We're giving Wychavon affordable housing. And then weeks later, no, we're not. How is that right? How is that appropriate? Why do people turn away from the planning process? Because of that, because of people finding loopholes after loopholes. It is shameful. It is shameful that we are here. We need affordable housing. This application was granted on affordable housing, and now we've come back. Now we've come back because we want to make some more money. I don't know what more to say than this is just wrong. This is wrong, and it should be refused, because we need to stand up and say that if you come here and you make the biggest fuss about building affordable housing, we have to hold you to that, because that is the only right thing to do. This is in open country. This is Greenbelt land, and it should be only built on if it's affordable housing, not because of a loophole in the planning process. It is shameful and it is wrong.
Thank you, Councillor Della. I always rely on you to say your piece. Thank you very much. I'll open it to anybody else's comments. Councillor Sims, followed by Councillor Morris.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I mean, I totally agree with Councillor Della. I mean, I think this is absolutely appalling. And I think we should refuse it, absolutely, categorically. Now, do it now, straight away, no. I totally think it should be refused. Nothing more to say except swearing.
Are you proposing refusal?
Sorry?
Are you proposing refusal?
Yes, I am. Yep.
You'll have to give some planning reasons, so perhaps you could think about those. Thank you. Did I have another hand up? Councillor Morris.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of extra points, which is the fact that the developer isn't here, I think, is atrocious, really, because if he believes that what he's now proposing is correct, then he should be here to allow us to quiz him. I remember this application, and 100% I know that I only agreed with it because it was affordable housing. And I went along, this might help you, rural exception site. That's what we agreed it on. And I just don't understand. I will bow to the greater experience on the committee. I don't understand how we've given permission on grounds, we've justified why we've given permission, and then the developer can play fast and loose and go, actually, I'm not saying it's a rural exception site, I'm just going to go in with a PIP. Now, we obviously will have to consider the grounds, but I'm with Councillor Sims, so I'd like to hear what everybody else thinks, that in principle we should refuse this, because as Mr. Councillor Order said, he's paying fast and loose with us. And we must show to our residents that we take all of these applications seriously, and when somebody's messing about, we call them out. Anyway.
Thank you. Thank you for those comments. Councillor Kersey.
I only got my hand half up, but you got me.
I saw it though.
Did you know what I was going to do? Thank you, Chairman. This is really quite simple for us, because this wouldn't be a case, it doesn't matter about the 5-year housing land supply, it doesn't matter about any of those things, because this applicant already has permission to build 6 homes. But particularly, it's because it's a rural exception site that we gave the approval for. More importantly, they have permission to build 6 affordable homes. That is the reason why we gave the permission, because it is situated where it is, and we gave the permission under the rural exception scheme for 6 affordable homes. If we were to grant this today, then we wouldn't give an additional 6 homes to the planning system. We wouldn't give an additional 6 affordable homes, because as it stands today, if we refuse this, this applicant can build out their 6 affordable homes. As has been said, the only reason, the sole reason why we gave permission is because they are affordable homes. We wouldn't have otherwise given permission in that location, and it is extremely clear that what the which is why, like my colleagues, I'm very disappointed that I wasn't able to give the applicant a run for his money this afternoon and ask him face to face why he's done this, because he simply tried to claim that he has got approval for the principle of development, which is why he's then coming in with open market homes. So he has permission for 6 affordable homes, and that's what he should build out if he chooses to, but most certainly we will not be approving this today.
Are you going to second this, this proposal to refuse?
Yes, I didn't realise there was a proposal because we haven't yet got the policies, but...
We have, but we need reasons for refusing these.
SWDP 2 and SWDP 16.
Add Councillor Kersey on that.
If I can defer to Councillor Kersey for more experience.
Well, I would happily defer to Kieran and Heather, because I don't know whether SWDP 15 meeting affordable housing needs come into play, because in theory we'd be actually costing the district 6 affordable homes if we did this. So it's in reverse. If we granted permission for open market houses, then we would be costing the housing needs register 6 affordable homes. So however you would like to articulate that would be lovely.
Right, if I can just go back to the first refusal reason, because you've quoted SWDP 2 and SWDP 16, I'd suggest we also reference MPPF Chapter 13, which deals with development in the Greenbelt. And I would leave it as a reference like that. In terms of the point about the loss of affordable housing, we've had a very, very brief chat. I don't think we've ever run anything like that before, but I don't see why we don't give it a try, because the appeal situation is one to test that in. So we can certainly run at that. I'd also suggest hearing members' passion, and quite rightly, I would suggest anger, and also from the Parish Council. Whilst I don't suggest this as a refusal reason, I think it's worth potentially adding as an informative to the resolution is we have an informative regarding the impact of public trust and confidence in the planning system and those who participate in it. Because obviously I can sense, ranging from anger to whatever about this scenario, and obviously it's one that officers have had to deal with professionally and with a straight bat. But I think the issues you allude to are, to my mind, reasonable, and we can certainly articulate a defence at appeal.
Thank you, Carl. Is there anything to add to that?
I was just going to add a bit more. So it was just to ask a question really in clarification on the greenbelt point, because obviously that the quote of the policy suggesting there's a conflict with that, and we just haven't quantified that. But I presume, as Adam's presentation spoke about, is whether members don't consider this to be infill development, because that would be the conflict at the moment. I think officers' view was that it was in accordance with that policy, but if that is just, we need to be clear on that, if that's what we were going to progress a refusal reason on.
Kieran, can I just, sorry, no. No, go on, Emma.
I think in stating that if this was approved, that we would be depriving the housing needs register of 6 homes is a very valid material planning reason to refuse this, because if this was a rural exception site, if this was for 100% affordable homes, everybody and their auntie would be quoting the housing needs register, and they would say how many homes are needed in this area. So we need to, by refusing this, equally, we need to quote that housing needs register and say that this would be depriving that housing need of 6 homes.
Mr. Sims?
Yeah, Kieran, can you just go back to your point about the infill, because that, I think that is very important if we're taking this to appeal, so clarifying that, which is what you wanted. So.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't, yeah, that's helpful on the affordable housing point, so I think that's quite clear in terms of that one. In terms of the greenbelt policy, so there's that's been mentioned in terms of reason for refusals, so that's SWDP 2 and what's 16? Oh, the exception policy is 16. So 16 relates to the affordable housing element in terms of where exceptions were related, and that's what was one of the justifications on the previous application. So it is relevant. But in terms of the specific conflict with the greenbelt policy, it was just to sort of iron out what the conflict that members have identified there. And what I was saying is there's some exceptions that allow for development in the greenbelt. One of them is for exception sites, which is why the previous was granted. The other is if it's infill development within the greenbelt. And I think if there's from the discussions and from what Adam said, that's an area that I was given that SWDP 2 was quoted. I wasn't sure whether it was in the context of conflict with greenbelt policy. If members are saying that they don't consider this site to constitute infill, then that would be a reason that it wouldn't comply with the greenbelt policy. If you're not, it's probably not a policy. It's not something we would be refusing because we haven't identified. So but we just need to be clear, because obviously we have to. Sorry, it's.
Sorry, you carry on for a minute if you've got. Is that it?
Well, I was just going to ask how much weight then would you give to using that policy?
The infill.
Yeah.
So are you saying you don't give it any weight because you have to give the reasoning?
Yeah. Well, any reason for refusal we'll have to justify. So I think if the point that will be made at an appeal, or is that this is considered to be infill by the applicants, because that's why it's considered acceptable in principle from a starting point. So that's the argument they'd be trying to make, and that's something that officers have accepted at this point. But obviously looking at the plan is helpful. It's a matter of judgment whether you consider that to be infill or not. Infill, there isn't a strict definition, and it's a matter of looking at the site characteristics and deciding whether it's infill. Some are more clear-cut than others, and in this case there's open aspects of the site that sort of open and expand into the greenbelt. So what I was sort of trying to tease out was whether that's where you were going with that reference to that policy, or whether it's something else. But I don't want to put, I'm not trying to direct.
I'm trying to say that it's not then, but I don't want it to conflict with the previous application where you've said it was.
No, well, that was different.
So that is totally different. So you can say
wasn't
this
considered
now,
infill.
say now that definitely we do not regard it.
So in the other case, it was under the exception policy, which allows it to come forward regardless of whether it's infill or not, almost. So there wasn't a point made on that.
So with that largesse, can we just say no? It is not infill.
So if that's what members consider it not to constitute infill, Yeah.
Let's just go in rotation. I just get one or two more views. Councillor Rowley, followed by Councillor Morris.
I mean, I can't see how it's infill because it's behind houses, but it's got houses on one side of it, but not on the other. So
Okay.
that, to me, isn't infill. And I don't think we considered it infill before. Well, I certainly didn't.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I can remember last time not needing to consider it infill, but I am minded that the officer's recommendation is that it's limited infill, which is why I asked the question. Now, I think from my perspective, I would be agreeing with the officer that this is limited infill, and if that weakens, if that's a weak point of appeal, then my suggestion is that we don't include it as a reason for saying no.
I think that's a point, a good point. I don't know how you feel about that. You'd like to say anything else on that?
I think ultimately, if members conclude that it's limited infill, you're bringing compliance with Greenbelt policy back into play. So what you're saying is that you don't consider this limited infill, and then for it conflicts with Greenbelt policy as laid out in the MPPF. So that's the issue. So if members are wanting to refuse this on the basis of harm to the Greenbelt, by definition, you are saying this isn't limited infill or infill in any way, shape or form. Because if you are saying it's limited infill, the MPPF clearly sets out that's a caveat to Greenbelt policy that allows residential development. So members vote, if your vote is harm to the Greenbelt because it doesn't meet any of the exceptions, so on and so forth, then you are saying, because what our defence would be and how we articulate the refusal reason would say it's not an infill site, it doesn't meet any of the exception clauses. So that's when you vote, you either vote because you're saying it's not infill, and if you're voting against that motion, you're saying effectively it is limited infill. That makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. What I'm saying it's not, but what I'm trying to ask is, or to look at how an appeal inspector would regard that.
Well, the inspector obviously will make their own judgment, but members already have articulated why they do not consider that to be an infill site. So that, as Adam said in his presentation, that there's a judgment call there. Members may quite within their gift to take a contribute to how we've assessed the site. You've clearly articulated why you don't think that's limited infill, given the openness aspect on a number of sides, it not having development immediately adjoining all or three of its sides. So those reasons have been set out clearly and rationally in terms of taking that argument forward for an appeal. What an inspector does, obviously, that's in their gift, but certainly members have given precise reasons why they do not think it's an infill site that we can run forward in that appeal.
So Councillor Sims, you take it then that's you're proposing this. So we're saying that for those reasons that you're proposing this, that it's not limited infill.
Yes.
And all the other, and Councillor Kersey, as seconder, the same.
Yes, to ensure that we encompass all of the reasons that will, the actual policies that will encompass everything that we've got concerns over, particularly, obviously, the...
So are there any more comments before we take a vote on this? No? Okay, over to you then, Heather. Thank you.
Right, members, I'm going to have a go at this, and then I'm going to come back to my proposer and seconder and make sure that they're absolutely happy. So the motion is to refuse the application for the following reasons, based on SWDP 2, that members do not consider it that it's infill, SWDP 16, which is our exceptions policy, NPPF Chapter 13, which so it conflicts with the Greenbelt policy, as again it's not infill, and SWDP 13, which is relates to the loss of 6 affordable housing units because of the existing permission, and then with the final wording of the refusal reasons being delegated to the Director of Planning and Infrastructure. Sorry, and we're going to put an informative note, which was also mentioned, about public trust in the planning system. Members happy? Yeah, proposer and seconder happy. So at that point, I'll move to the vote. Thank you. Those in favour, please. And so you're voting to refuse the application. That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much, everybody, for coming, and thank you to the speakers, and we'll see you next month. Thank you.